Is my camera off?
Yeah. Everything
Okay.
else is good. Yeah.
Everything else is good.
The chair, if you want to share.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Yep. We have a number of items.
There's agendas on that chair right there, ma'am.
Are we, Josh, let us know when we're ready to start.
We're live.
Yeah.
Did I start the meeting?
Yeah.
I guess Lou. I guess we'll just wait for Jim, right?
Yeah, Jim is here, but I think he
Yeah.
just stepped away.
Sure. I think. Are we all set, Owen? Okay.
I can turn on the volume if you want me
To check it or?
You want me to turn it off until you're ready? Or are you guys?
Sure.
Okay.
We good? Okay. Good evening. This is Louis George. I'm chair of the Danvers Planning Board. We're here for a public meeting of the Danvers Planning Board. Today is November the 12th, 2024. It's a little bit past 6:30. We're here at the Danvers Senior Center, and I'm here with our other members, Michael DeCoulis, Jean Hartnett, our clerk, Jim Sears, and Tim Spittle. And so we have the agenda for today. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing, or continuation rather of a public hearing, with respect to our subdivision rules and regulations, discussion of new planning board rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Danvers, Massachusetts. And so I know that we'll have this was sort of, we began this discussion at our last meeting, and will be, I believe staff does have a presentation that they'll be giving. And so we actually, at the conclusion of our last meeting, we decided to start this meeting a little bit early, just to be able to have a discussion of our of the proposed subdivision rules and regulations, have some discussion, and probably I think we were looking at. We'll see how we go in terms of discussion, but I think we were looking at potentially maybe 45 minutes to an hour with respect to that. So, Josh, do you want to?
Yep. Very good. Just gonna bring it up. So yep.
If you can just speak up into the mic too, just 'cause
Yep.
it's a little hard
Absolutely.
for
Sorry. Just
people can hear.
getting oriented from. So yes, we put this presentation together. So we we were hearing from the board that they would be interested in kind of seeing, it's a 60-plus page document. The board was interested in kind of breaking it down a little bit. So we tried to kind of break it down just by section of the document and just kind of highlight some of the important things per section. And I think it might be beneficial to just kind of go, just kind of section by section. If there's someone from the board wants to maybe do it different, or kind of like what we did with the zoning amendment stuff recently.
So what sort of do a walkthrough
Yeah.
presentation first and then
Yeah, sure. We could,
total?
sure. That, or even if we're on a section, the slide, each section's like a slide or two
Yep.
slides. While we're talking about if someone has a question or comment on this particular section or this particular item, I think that's completely fine. If the board has a question, we don't have to hold questions to the end. I think
Okay.
it's fine just to deal with it section by section. So
Okay.
So yeah, I guess I'll just get into it.
Now, we do have members of the public here as well this is a public hearing.
That's right.
So if the public has questions about it, should we?
I think maybe at the end, maybe if that's okay with.
That makes sense.
That
Okay.
seems fine.
Okay, great.
But yes, it is a public hearing, so the public has the opportunity to have a question or comment. So just this section 1, just the general, kind of just the first section/chapter.
Mhm.
We've tried to just kind of each section is like 3 or 4 or 5 pages, but we've tried to just highlight,
Mhm.
or show in this presentation the bigger items, more important items. So just like today, the board does have the ability to grant waivers when they deem that the waivers are in the public interest. That's what's on the books currently, but we're just going to continue to allow that. Staff, one of the changes or new things is we're allowing ourselves an opportunity to just make sure, in a situation where we haven't discussed with the applicant the end application, it's beneficial for us sometimes to, when an application's dropped off, just give us an opportunity to look at it before it's stamped in and official, because once you stamp it in, the clock starts,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of, in Mass General Law, days where things have to happen. So we're just giving ourselves a week or so of work just to have the opportunity to review the application, ask it, say, hey, this sheet's missing or this information's missing. So that is sort of a new language.
Mhm.
But we think where we sit, it would be helpful. Is it okay if I just keep going, or anyone have any questions or comments on section 1? Okay.
Typo.
Oh. Okay, yeah. There's a typo?
Yeah, right at the top.
Oh, okay. Yep. Thank you. Yep, that was just for this, but thank you. Yep.
Just a question, Josh, with
Yes, sir.
respect to in terms of the town staff must determine completeness of application within 10 business days.
Mhm.
So if that 10 days, once that 10 days passes,
Yeah.
then it's deemed,
I guess, yeah.
accepted, is that?
I guess that would be the assumption. I guess we could clarify that in writing, but that's a good point. We could clarify what happens when
Right,
we could do that.
okay. Just to make it clear, because we also don't want, if there's some sort of problem with the application, and it comes off on day 11 or day 12 or something like that,
Sure. Yep. We could clarify that a little bit.
Okay.
This is section 2 is talking about A&Rs, kind of just the process, the A&R process. All the language is to be in, not just in this section, but all of them are with the dates and the times and the expiration and all that. The legal stuff is all just from Mass General Law, so we're incorporating that language for the section, the So the 21 days for the A&R comes from, Mass General Law. So when someone submits a A&R application, the board has 21 days it has to be added to agenda within 21 days. So we're not changing any, there's no policy change or anything. The majority of the board has to sign it. Nothing, pretty straightforward. Section 3 is preliminary plan.
Josh, does this address any, I know I think in the past we've heard some concerns about A&Rs before, I guess in terms of access and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. There is a little bit of language in the document, but we could, it talks about the 3 prongs.
Mm-hmm.
I could make sure that is included, but right now that you bring that up, I could check to make sure that language is in there, but I believe that it is.
Okay.
There's a lot of language that it's not a subdivision, it's a distinctly different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I could ensure that language is included.
Okay.
Section 3 is talking about preliminary plans. Once again, very kind of consistent, or is consistent with Mass General Law regarding preliminary plans. They're not required for residential plans, but we generally are in favor of them. And another piece to this is, and it'll be throughout the document, is to sort of focus on improving drainage systems and stormwater with the, encouraging or strongly encouraging and or requiring low impact development.
Mm-hmm.
So when working with engineering and putting this document together, that's certainly one of their kind of focuses, like main interest in adding more modern stormwater regulations into this document, which our current document is quite outdated. So
Mm-hmm.
hold on.
Okay.
So this is section 4 is definitive plans.
Just before we move on from section 4.
Yep. Yes. Yes.
Does anyone have any questions with respect to section 3? I mean, this is obviously this is just going through the
Yeah.
PowerPoint. Well, we can certainly go through it in more detail once we've gone through this too. Okay. All right, Josh, why don't you move on to 4 then?
So this is just talking about the definitive plans. Talks about applicability and just.
Excuse me, could you please, if you're going to talk, if you could take it out, we're in the middle of the meeting.
Once again, it just talks about each section. The way it's set up is there's a lot of dates and kind of the process when they have to drop. When has to be submitted, when you make modifications, or what's required with the plans.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with a definitive plan, the submission requirements are significantly more than the section previous to this. Much more details.
Mm-hmm.
The preliminary in the section before, the state doesn't require nearly as much as the definitive plan.
Mm-hmm.
And something that's kind of like a major point with this one is a new kind of part to this is we have a series or a number of mandatory conditions that will be in every decision related to definitive plan. I tried to highlight the 5 here were some of like the more significant ones, or there's several more, but just for this exercise,
Mm-hmm.
I just picked like the 5 or 6 that I thought would be that are the most important, not most important, but
Mhm.
that the board should know about, I guess.
Okay.
Any questions or comments on this?
No, not right in the moment. Yep, okay.
So here's probably, so the first 4 chapters, sections are kind of, what are you applying for, what's required, submission requirements, plans, checklist. This section's probably, sections 5 through 9 are definitely more what I would say like changes or differences than the previous regulations. You can come. It's fine. So this section is focusing on the performance guarantee.
Mhm.
So we're trying to be proactive and ensure that some of the situations that have recently been occurring as subdivisions kind of wind down to finish. From the town side, we're just trying to like be, protect ourselves. So we spent a decent amount of time working with engineering staff about
Can
putting
you
together.
speak up a little more?
Yep.
Josh, and
We would spend a decent amount of time with engineering putting together kind of like a robust section requirements related to the performance guarantee.
mhm.
No, I would
So
say
I've tried
something not to be to know that. I would
so
say,
let me just,
I did really
sorry.
appreciate that. That's all you have to say.
sorry, let me
Yeah.
just,
Could someone
yep,
douse their phone, please? Thank you.
it's not a phone, I'm
It's a
sorry.
Teams meeting.
Oh, is it?
I think he has to mute her.
Oh, it's, all right. Okay,
Sorry. Yeah.
Thanks.
Let me just see. So yeah, these are all very new language. One of the big kind of changes or modifications that we made is just instead of historically allowing a subdivision developer to keep if you have a project and you keep coming, they keep coming to the board, asking like continuously for, money, drawing down the performance guarantee. And, it's pretty administratively heavy from staff and even the board's time. So we proposed, and we could, obviously everything on here is part of the conversation. We proposed that only allowing the developer to ask for a decrease in the performance guarantee twice before completion of the subdivision.
okay. Is there currently a limit right now in
No.
terms of the
No,
number of times?
no.
Okay.
And then at the bottom of the slide is just a number of contingencies and percentages based on, we really don't want to get to the situation that we've sort of been unfortunately getting into, where projects aren't getting completed in time,
Mhm.
and then we don't have enough money to finish it. So we're just really trying to make sure that that situation doesn't happen.
Mhm.
So we have put in a number of kind of contingencies and kind of levers for us to kind of, just basically protect ourselves. We worked with engineering about coming up with some of these percentages and kind of basically the performance guarantee policy. Obviously, these percentages and years and times were open to conversation, but this was what we are proposing at this time. But
As we're just moving along, any questions with respect to performance guarantees? Okay. All right, Josh, why don't you continue on then? What are the next
yeah.
part of it?
Yep, this is just a continuation of that same section, but one of the big ones is So generally what happens is when a subdivision's approved, the first the first kind of mechanism to protect, agreement with the town that the work is being done is the covenant.
Mhm.
And then what has historically happened is, the covenant is replaced by another form of performance guarantee. Typically here, it appears to be a tripartite agreement, but it could be a number of things. One of the things that we're proposing in this is that and what's happened is the developer will sell all the lots and all the houses and then, have the ability to kind of walk away.
Mhm.
And we're saying that no matter what, that there has to be at least 25% of the total number of buildable lots, or at minimum one lot must remain in the original covenant. So that situation doesn't occur again.
Mhm.
It's just everything's sort of just with the lens of just making sure that we're protected, basically.
Mhm.
Don't you still have the roadway, though?
What's that? I'm sorry.
The roadway hasn't been turned over yet, though?
Sure, but once all the lots and houses have been sold, it doesn't really. If there's not enough money, it kind of puts us in a bind. It doesn't like.
But how would they get their release to sell if you still have the tripartite out there?
Well, sell the lot. I'm sorry. Sell one of the lots.
You got the tripartite, and you go through the process every year
Yeah.
to review it. So, have we had a situation that there's been a problem?
Yes, three recently. Yes,
Okay.
3 in the past year and a half.
Okay.
I guess if I would keep moving along, these last kind of 3 sections are very technical and kind of getting the nitty gritty of streets and trees and hydrants and basically everything related to, everything, building, the construction, the materials of the subdivision, which essentially, what the town, what the subdivision is. So they're pretty technical. We've really kind of deferred, and the engineering staff's been very helpful in helping us put these last kind of 3 sections together. And in each of these sections, there's a number of kind of standards that are cited. So I guess I'll keep going down. So I guess from a policy standpoint, sort of preliminary discussed at our last meeting.
Mhm.
So it's a proposal. It's not, obviously this is a conversation, but what we're proposing right now is to eliminate dead-end streets, or what we call cul-de-sacs. And then the next slide. So, from a planning perspective and from engineering, there's a number of kind of reasons to prohibit dead-end streets. Here are, on the slide, we list a couple. This is obviously a conversation. As planning staff, this is sort of our recommendation, or what we think would be for best practice. But we're obviously interested in hearing from the board on this topic. And
Now,
so,
Josh, just a question, just in terms of this, you give some of the reasons to, in terms of prohibiting dead-end streets, connected streets, connectivity, disrupts road network, challenging for emergency services, challenging for utilities. Has engineering, has engineering weighed in on this, or is that a concern for them, or?
No, they're actually, I mean, not to speak for them, but they would also, I believe that they would also be in favor, especially for that utility piece.
Mhm.
I'm not an engineer, but a big the water system in particular, when water pipes are not looped,
Mhm.
the end of the cul-de-sac is not good for water quality is better when it's moving,
Mhm.
and when it's not moving, when the pipe dead ends, I believe that it's not good for the water system as a whole when you're not looping, when you're not, interconnected, looping through. When it's dead ending, it's not good for the water system.
Okay. So engineering's aware of this proposal?
Yes, I believe, without speaking with them, that they are in favor. They're also in favor, for at least that particular reason, and there might even be more.
Okay. And do you know of other, and obviously I'll turn it over to the board if they have questions on this one too. Has this been done in other, surrounding municipalities? I mean, has this been, has this been done elsewhere?
Yes, for sure. It certainly has. I don't, at the top of my head, have a specific example of a town that definitively has, but I
think that would be helpful to know.
But I could certainly gather that information.
Okay. Especially if they've, if they've done it, and in terms of what the, if they have also had a little bit of time to see how it's worked out as well.
Sure.
So,
Excuse me, if I may, Chair, Brian Kelly, Director
Oh.
of Planning.
yes, Brian.
Hi there.
Hi.
I can just give you a very quick.
You may want to speak up a little bit, just because it's a little hard to hear you.
Sure, I can talk louder. That's
Okay.
not a problem.
Okay.
So the main thing that cul-de-sacs do is provide a lot of single-family homes on irregular shaped lots. That's essentially what it does. So when you prevent that, you just have more standard lots and less density in general, I guess. That's not a reason to do it, and that's not why but you're talking about what happens when, which is the question, I believe, is what happens when you stop doing dead-end streets. You will have, in general, in this particular case in Danvers, less single-family homes built, potentially. But I think the other side of that is that we don't necessarily need a ton more single-family homes. I want to be very clear that we're not doing this for a density reason at all, period, like this at all. But it does decrease the, a whole bunch of single-family homes being built. So that's just a fact. And the idea is to maybe, put density somewhere else, not in the single-family home bucket. But anyway, population density was not, this is a planning and engineering exercise that we had with engineering. It was not a social engineering thing, which this has nothing to do with. All the reasons that we have are planning and engineering related.
Got it. Okay. And as I asked, and Brian, as I asked Josh, engineering has been involved in this, or they've either concurred or weighed in?
Oh yeah, they're definitely on board. For just the utilities in general, it's better to have connected streets, not just for water, but just think of just plowing operations, just efficiency when it comes to road maintenance. There's a lot of reasons. There's basically a lot of planning and engineering reasons to stop them, and virtually the only one, the reasons to keep them going is essentially if you really want to build more single-family homes, then then that would be a good way to do it.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Any
Well, as I said at the last meeting, I'm opposed to this only because, I mean, I've been on the board since the mid-'90s, and I struggle to think of a development that came in that was connected. I don't know if Nancy knows any, but everything we've done is a cul-de-sac. So we talk a lot about trying to promote and provide more housing, and we're talking about not encouraging more single-family housing. So, I mean, had this come up 30 years ago, maybe it would make more sense. I think right now, there's probably 10 acres in town that you might be able to develop. You got some reuse. We're going to see St. Mary's School perhaps come in. Carmelite's going to come in. Other than that, where else are we going to put a subdivision? I really don't know. The Nike site, maybe if it goes out of, we did an inventory probably 15 years ago. There's very, very, very little development left, developable land. Why are we changing the policy now at this point? Because we don't want to stub out a water line? It doesn't make sense. I mean, the things we've been approving lately, 6-lot subdivision, Chatham Lane. These are small subdivisions. They're not big 30-lot subdivisions that we're putting in. Granted, the Carmelite's going to be big. You know, are we going to force them to make connected street? That's in 3 different towns. I don't know what the thought process is. We're talking a lot about housing. We're having all these meetings to encourage housing and find more ways to have housing. And now we have these ARUs that we want to have everyone put. The state's going to say everyone can make their house an extended family living unit, you know, and bypass our local regulation. So what's the goal here? Do we want more housing or don't we? And I think to have a prohibition on dead-end streets, I think is a carte blanche prohibition. This is our rule. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. It could be a goal or maybe a policy that we want to see if it would make sense based on the size of the development. But to make it connect, you're going to take up maybe an extra lot or two by blowing out that cul-de-sac and having it connect to the next street, which goes against the idea of creating more housing. And these houses are selling for $1 million plus. These aren't townhouses, little townhouses we're building now. Everything is $1 million plus, which is going to help the tax base and increase the housing. So I'm not sure if, I think we're 30 years late on this, truthfully. But that's just me.
Anybody else? Tim?
Yeah, I'd like to hear more. I mean, we're going to continue this conversation. The fourth point on this slide strikes me as the one that I'm not an expert in, right? What is the impact on the water system of a dead end? Because my general position would be I don't see a strong reason to prohibit an entire type of development for something that could potentially be engineered around or is still sufficient. Like, what does 4 mean? Is it your water is toxic if it's at a dead end, or is it just a minor inconvenience we can work around? That strikes me as, because the other 3 are, sure, they're not preferable, but to Jim's point, I mean, I looked at the parcel map. We have 19 developable parcels that are big enough for a subdivision that aren't currently developed right now in Danvers. Like, I looked on the map, none of them would connect. They're all going to be dead ends. So do we want more houses? I would prefer something other than single family, but I'll take what I can get, right? Are we going to give it up just because the water system is challenging? What does challenging mean? I want to know more about that.
Josh, there was a point in here that talked about not allowing the water system to loop back. I believe it said that would prevent the dead end stub. Is there a reason for avoiding that other than cost?
I guess I'm sure. I guess if you could just say that question, I guess I'm unclear of your question. I'm sorry.
So there was a point in here, and I can't find exactly where. Oh, right here. There shall be no dead end water mains in any subdivision, regardless of size, and no water main shall double back on the same street. But if we had the water mains doubling back, would that avoid the issue that Tim's referencing right now?
Isn't that comment saying that it doesn't want to double back?
It doesn't want to, but if they allowed it to, would that eliminate the issue?
I mean, I think it's
very quick. Sorry, I have the answer. Sorry.
That's fine, Brian. Go.
The regulation says that all water mains shall be looped between the existing water mains, provided that the connections are spaced a minimum of 500 feet apart. So there is an engineering solution. To Tim's question, number 4 is minor compared to life safety operations and other real things that we care about. But it is minor compared to 1, 2, and 3. Yes, it's livable. We've been doing it for a while. It basically has to be looped in a certain way. Costs a little bit more, but basically there's a little more problems with it. Not a killer at all. We're not doing this for water mains. That's not the reason. I understand it's one of the reasons here, but has nothing. Yeah, I mean, that was not the impetus. The impetus was connectivity, the road network, emergency services.
I think just to follow up on that, to Jim's point, I think we can do better with emergency services and things like that, but just avoiding future housing is maybe not the best answer just to support that. I don't think we need to keep talking about it, or I don't need to keep talking about it as other people's comments, I'm sure, but that's just my thoughts on it.
Jean, do you have any thoughts on?
No, I'd like to hear more from engineering.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as for myself, I mean, I definitely have I'm interested in knowing what other communities have done and what their track record has been, because I definitely can understand the connectivity issues and better connectivity, particularly for walking, for transport, the emergency services issue, just in terms of I'm interested in learning a little more on the engineering side, if we even if just to get a little more info on engineering. But I'm interested in what other communities are doing. I'm not, at least at this point in time, I'm not, I would not be opposed to a prohibition on it. But I also be interested in knowing what other communities have done, and also if there's a way that it's been potentially even incentivized as well. If there's a way that one can incentivize not doing cul-de-sacs or not having dead ends. So I know that we've also done that in even like the downtown area where we've had certain incentives for certain actions. So again,
Lou, I'm sorry. Could I just make one more point?
Yeah, please go ahead, Brian.
I want to. The point is that it's a tough thing to talk about incentives here, because the average American is willing to spend about 20% more to live on a cul-de-sac. It's desirable, not necessarily the best for people, but it is desirable.
Okay.
So people are willing to spend that extra money to live on a cul-de-sac. So that's what makes this difficult. So I'll stop there. Sorry.
Okay. Got it. Okay. All right.
So, yeah, a little bit more information on this, and we continue, that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I think we can get a little more information. I think we have some, definitely, I think have some opinions that are against it currently, but I think that I'm interested in getting some more information in terms of track record, in terms of what others have done, and I'm not even sure if we can even get, is this something, can we, is this something in terms of the engineering piece on this something, can we get comments from?
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, I think I didn't mean to cut you off. I think, we could potentially get you something or an opinion or reasons why engineering would be for or against, or, but their opinion on the matter, I could try and get that in some manner.
Can I make one other comment?
Sure, go ahead.
It strikes me that this issue of, for example, emergency services, I could see that being a problem. I grew up on a very long dead-end street. And yes, sometimes it took a while for them to find houses at the end of the street. The shorter the cul-de-sac, the less that's meaningful. If you're breaking a plot down into two, it's a very, very small subdivision. It's what's the difference between curbside versus pulling into a dead end that's very small. So if this is the concern, it strikes me that a limit on the size of a dead-end street might be a better way to police this, so we're not getting really long dead-end roads that are harder to access and maintain. So you're not completely precluding an entire type. You can make a waiver on the edges, but at least try to keep them to be smaller.
Well, you get 600 feet. After 600 feet, you have to get a waiver. If you go
Currently,
more than,
currently on the books, that's what
Huh?
Jim's referring to. You're referring to the current regular.
right.
Mhm.
So if you go over 600, you have to get a waiver. But I don't see how, I mean, the cul-de-sac is designed to fit the fire truck. I mean, you know, I don't know how we're limiting emergency services. I think that's just a throw-in, kind of. I just don't see. I mean, it
I want to
could
be very, very clear. That's not the case at all. It's if there's something blocking that, there's no way to get there. If there's a blocking of the one way, if it's one way in, one way out, that's what we mean by emergency services. If it's one way in, one way out, and it's blocked for whatever reason, there's no way to get to the emergency. So that's a very good point. I'm glad you said that, but that's what we mean.
something blocking the 50-foot right-of-way. So there's something, a tractor trailer is blocking the access, is what you're telling me.
Or I mean, even what we saw.
Yeah, whatever.
I mean, it could be weather. It could be. I mean, what we just saw in North Carolina, right? Trees falling down, right? I mean.
Or is he talking, Brian, were you talking about not just blocking the street itself, but you talking about connectivity because you might have two cul-de-sacs as opposed to a through street?
I wasn't trying to make it difficult. It's a one-way in, one-way out. If there's something wrong, like not like a random tractor trailer, but like a tree falls down, that happens all the time. And yeah, you go there, you cut it up. It's not a big deal. The point I guess I'm really trying to make is that there are no real planning and engineering reasons to have cul-de-sacs. I think that's the point. There's only reasons to get rid of them.
Okay.
But if no one wants it, it's super easy, and everyone wants to live on a cul-de-sac, then we just don't put this in. I mean, it's that simple.
Well, I think it's a policy that you're encouraging, but, which is
Yeah.
fine, but I don't think we should prohibit. I think it can be looked at. I think, like, to Tim's point, if you look at the remaining 19 developable parcels, what could be put there? I would imagine that most of them couldn't support connectivity. I would imagine most of them are going to be cul-de-sacs. So are we going to just not develop those parcels now because we don't like cul-de-sacs? Even though we've done it for the last 30 years? It seems totally anti all of this rhetoric that
It is anti-Danvers for sure. It is not what we've been doing for 50 plus years. It is
what
the
we've been
complete
doing.
opposite.
It is what we've been doing.
I think what he's
Yeah,
saying is
it
this
is.
proposal is not what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's
But
the
we're
exact
talking
opposite.
about promoting housing. We signed on to the state mandate for MBTA. We're promoting housing. We have to help get a lot more housing, but we don't want to do housing now because it's going to be a cul-de-sac, and that's all we've done in the last 30 years. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not in support of it. If you want to put it as a goal, or maybe we can study it and try to encourage the developer to take 3 less lots because we got to connect it to the other street. I don't think they'd want to do that. It's not going to make sense. You're going to have 3 houses on a 600-foot road because you got to connect it with the other road. It's not going to make sense economically to them for what it costs them $1.5 million to bring a road in and all the infrastructures, and now you just cut out 2 or 3 lots. So you're not encouraging, you're discouraging development.
I think you are totally hit it on the head. The idea is that the cul-de-sac houses that are being built now, what does the planning board want? Does the planning board want more, like you said, $1 million, $1.5 million single-family 5,000 square foot homes? Do they want to promote more of that, or they want to promote something different? It's a policy, like you said, it's a policy.
Well, that's in a
decision that the
residence 3. That's a residence 3 example. I mean, if you're at residence 2, residence 1, I don't know if there's much left in residence 1 to develop. I mean, I'd have to see. I don't know, Tim, maybe you can help me.
I do have a nice map.
But
I can show you.
in general, the cul-de-sac, in general, the houses that are being built on cul-de-sacs are generally, obviously, vacant land in the bigger areas. And what has been built are beautiful, expensive homes. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying you bring up a good point in the fact that this is a policy decision by the planning board in terms of what types of housing they want to promote. And that's why we're bringing it up, because it's a policy decision that you guys have to make. Just because I think this does not at all mean that the planning board has to agree. Period. And I wouldn't, like I said, it's a policy. I'm here to give you the facts in terms of, well, if you do this, this is what will happen, and if you do that, that will happen. This is more, the only thing that doesn't make a ton of sense is saying, well, this will decrease housing, or this is going to discourage housing. It will discourage a specific type of housing. That's what this will do. This will discourage, the normal cul-de-sac house that's being built in Danvers, and you just got to decide if you want more of those or less of those. That's the conversation.
Well, that's why we have different size, zones. We'll talk more. Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, anyone else want to? Okay. Yeah, I think this is definitely,
Yeah.
I'm interested in talking about this more. I'd like some more information, because I think again, understanding what Jim said, I think but I think that the pros, I think, I want to find out a little bit more about them. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So section 8, Josh.
Section 8 is the most technical
Okay.
of the whole document. Engineering did a great job. And in this, they're literally talking about, how they're building the road, the thickness of the road, the materials used for the road, what kind of trees they want, the size of the tree when they're planted, the fire hydrants, the brand, and then the very specific, very specific details of the drainage system. So this is really getting the nitty gritty from the engineering materials piece, the piece that I could probably speak to the least, but that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then even this is just an example of like a table that's in this section. This is just showing, the different types of road classifications and the different kind of requirements that we'll have for each, from where we sit.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of subdivisions that we will probably see are probably that one on the bottom row, the minor residential,
Mm-hmm.
kind of exactly what we were just kind of talking about. Just for example, some of these other ones we likely will not see in our lifetime, but that's fine. Or, for some time, there hasn't been probably an industrial collector built in town in a while, but that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then we, at the end here is just kind of the definition section,
Okay.
where we're giving definitions of some of what we deem like the important terms. So just to make sure that they're clear, it's clarified what is meant when that word is used in the
Anything
document.
notable in terms of changes of definitions?
Well, everything in here is
new
like
definitions.
everything in here is like new. Like we basically it's like the whole document is brand new.
Right.
I guess this property owners association was very likely not in the previous document.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say anything from nothing like policy-ish
Okay.
related, but
I see alley here. Is that something that we'll potentially see more of in town, less of?
I would say probably less of, although, less are very, very, very infrequent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any questions
So
from
that
the
was it.
board with respect to any of the this latter part here in terms of definitions and,
I guess sort of just a quick comment. I'm reading it right now, but it talks about like the tree warden taking into account like overhead wires and stuff. And I think that like defining that specifically would be helpful. I mean, we've all seen way too many times in Danvers where the trees are hacked away because the wires are kind of going through them, and it just seems inefficient to plant trees that we then hack down. So I don't know what the answer is to that, but maybe there's a better way to go about that.
So you're saying in this, is that in the definition section?
Yeah.
Under what term?
On page 49, it
Oh,
says,
okay.
all details regarding choice of trees shall be required by the tree warden of the town of Danvers. The tree warden will consider existence of future installation of overhead wires and underground utilities.
So you think we should modify that
I
definition?
don't know what it needs to be. I just don't want to keep planting trees that we then have to hack down because the wires are in the way. So I don't know if it needs to be like dwarf trees or if we need to better place. I'm not sure what the answer is. It's just something we maybe should think
It's
about.
an issue that, as we look through this document, should think about.
Just my
Yeah.
personal feelings. I don't
Yeah.
know if anyone else has comments on it, but
Okay.
I agree. Especially on North Street. You put the trees on the opposite side of the wires.
Hmm.
And not,
Maybe that should be the design piece of this.
and not right in front of where your drain comes from your house, so the roots can destroy it
Trees on opposite side of.
with the wires. But the new subdivision is gonna be all underground anyways. The new stuff, but.
okay. Any others have? Jean, anything?
Not on this section.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So, so in terms of this, I know you all have, I think we have Word versions of this, so we can get any,
Yep.
if there's any nitty-gritty feedback, we can get to you.
Yep. We're very happy to look through that. Yep.
Okay. And so I would anticipate that we want to continue this to our next,
Absolutely.
at the very least, to our next meeting.
Yep.
I want to be mindful of time because we have other agenda items here and want to be respectful of people's time. But this is a public hearing.
Right.
Does anyone have any public comments with respect to the subdivision, these revised subdivision rules and regulations? Why don't you identify yourself and
My name is John Colantoni. I'm involved in the Beaverbrook Woods subdivision off of Route 62 and also the Chatham Estates
yeah,
subdivision off of North Street.
is this related to the?
Mr. Chair, don't worry, I'm going to stay on topic here.
Okay. Thank you,
All
sir.
I wish is that you heard what I said before the meeting and we can be put on the agenda next time. On this process of the subdivision, I have a couple questions and comments.
Sure.
How does it work on the next process? Like, is there a certain date that this has to be voted on, either, yay or nay? Or is it something that just is ongoing until you decide that it's time?
I'm not 100% sure of your question, but
I think he's asking just in terms of timing, when this
yeah.
would.
So this has been advertised. So any new subdivision would be, how we view this, would have to follow these guidelines.
So, though this is being discussed and the planning board hasn't taken an official vote,
Mhm.
these are already rules that someone submitting an application
Yes.
has to follow.
Yes.
So, through the chair,
Yes, sir.
how is that possible? I don't understand how that's possible. It's a public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a submission of documents. The board has not voted on them. So does the planning staff, and I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm really trying to understand this. Does the planning staff run what happens in Danvers? Or does the planning board run what happens in Danvers, planning-wise, with the staff acting on what they approve or disapprove? So I'm just trying to figure out, because this hasn't been voted on, so how is it already?
It hasn't been voted on, and it hasn't been voted on, and the planning board will ultimately vote on these, and as revisions take place. I think what staff was mentioning was respect to that because this has been advertised, any sort of changes in the zoning, that in essence you'd be for future developments, you'd be subject to that, to the zoning.
So right now, I have an opportunity for more land in Danvers. That would be a cul-de-sac development. So basically what I've just been told is that if I file an application and use my team that I normally use, which some of them sitting in the room, to apply for that application, we would not be allowed to do a cul-de-sac.
Uh,
Is that correct?
A little bit of a gray, is a little bit of gray, but
I mean, you're asking for a legal opinion right now, and I want to.
Right.
I'm not gonna
Okay,
be giving a
I
legal
apologize.
opinion.
I guess-
Brian might be able to, not to put him on the
I
spot.
guess
But
so I think that's something for the board to think about, because I don't think anyone should be filing an application and have to follow rules that haven't been voted on by the planning board yet, especially when it's still in a public forum. And the public forum hasn't been officially closed. So I'll move on, because I know you have a large agenda. So being involved in two heavy developments, even though they're small developments, one's 8 and one's 9, with 8 that we could build, it takes a long time sometimes because of the site work that has to be done and some of the hurdles that you have to go through. So I think it's important, as part of these rules, if you're going to do new rules, that the developers get a chance to update the planning board as part of the rules, where they don't have to necessarily go through the planning department, maybe go through the planning department to get on the agenda, but they should be allowed to come in, if it's once a year or twice a year or whatever, if they want, to update the board. Because I think it's very important sometimes to hear from the people that are in the trenches doing the work and dealing with the people moving to Danvers, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a suggestion that I would make. Two, who actually, with these new rules, approves the subdivisions that come? Still the planning board, correct?
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
All right? And when the planning board approves them, they would vote on them, and the final language of that approval, though it might be written by staff, the planning board still can tweak that and all that, and they would vote on that, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's a very important point, because that's not what's always followed now with the process that we have.
I would.
Not
move
sure
So,
if
so
I-
I want to make sure that, what I'm trying to say to the board is, it's important that the planning board is still voting on what's there, and still has a say on how it's written up on the decisions.
If you've noticed, in terms of any planning board meeting, if we've doing any sort of decision, oftentimes there is revision to language, and our clerk Jean can very much say that oftentimes we have to make, where we're adding conditions and we're making revisions, which are, ultimately the vote is by the planning board. And so if there's a recommended decision that is being moved, then we are ultimately voting on that. And any revisions or any conditions that are added in the course of the meeting, that is our vote.
And I agree 100%. And I'm involved in a situation right now in a present subdivision where I need the help of the planning board, because I'll use Josh's terms, we're in a gray area. So the planning board made the decision, voted on the decision, agreed on it. So I think it's important for these developers who's spending all this money to be able to get in front of the planning board, as long as they do it the right way, to get on the agenda, to be able to share with them and to ask questions if need be at the time, since ultimately the decision came from the planning board, and the write-up on how it was approved technically came from the planning board, tweaking what the planning staff wrote. And that's forgotten about a lot. A subdivision gets approved, the developers leave, they do the development, and all of a sudden they can only deal with the planning staff. That's not right. They
This
should
is
be able to get
entirely
in front of the planning
inappropriate, by the way.
board, because that's what makes a
want to
stronger
interrupt here. I don't even
subdivision.
care. I want to interrupt here and say how inappropriate this is, and
So,
I'll stop there.
The
Okay.
decrease twice,
Can we
I
keep
think
it,
that's a,
can we keep
Yeah.
it responsive to the proposals?
right. So Josh, I don't know who that was speaking.
That was Brian Zakelli.
Hi, Brian. So the decrease twice, I think it's a good idea to have some type of rule on that, but I don't think it should be twice for the whole project. Maybe it's twice a year, because some of these projects can go on 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how big they are. So maybe some type of limit, but I think it should be by year and not for the entire project,
I think
or
the
some
id-
type of timeline.
I think the idea is not to have these projects go for that amount of time. That's part of the reason for it.
Right.
You know.
Well, any developer would like to have the projects go quicker, because it's only better for them, but sometimes it's literally impossible. Like, so I think it's a great idea to have a limit on how many times you can ask to decrease the bond or the tripartite, but I don't think it should be twice for the entire project.
Well, on that subject, I think what we were doing for a lot of years in the fall, what we wanted to do for some of these subdivisions was, go over the performance bond, especially in the sense where we had subdivisions that weren't fully paved and didn't have the binder course down for plowing purposes. So we typically try to get developers in here on an annual basis, say in October, November, to go over that and see if, they could get their paving done before the winter came. And it's a good opportunity to get some of these open projects in here on an annual basis if they're not doing that regularly. So that was a good practice.
The selling of the lots, by pure coincidence, the two subdivisions I'm involved in, one, as you know, Josh, we've sold most of the lots and are only building 2 out of that subdivision. But it's our responsibility, when we took on this subdivision, that we have to finish for the town of Danvers, the street, all the responsibilities. So I think it might be a good idea to have some type of, if it's 25%, the developer has to build themselves, or whatever it may be, that might be a good idea. But you certainly can't eliminate where they can't sell the lots, because sometimes that helps move the subdivision along quicker, as it has with us at Chatham Estates.
We were just saying one lot.
I think it's
Yeah,
one lot.
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, but you could sell all of them except.
I think it's an alternative. I think it's 25% or one lot.
Yeah.
Okay?
So, and I'll just be my last 2 things. Public safety is the number one issue on anything that you build, no matter if it's a single-family house, a cul-de-sac, an apartment building, whatever. So whatever the fire department, whatever the police department says, in my world, that's God. That's what you do. And if it costs extra money to do it, you do it. To eliminate cul-de-sacs altogether is just a huge mistake. And this may sound corny, it may sound old-fashioned, because you're ruining a quality of life. One of the biggest thrills I get every day is when I go to our subdivision off Route 62, and the 6 families that we already have living there, the 7th family that's getting ready to move in, the relationships that's been developed, and the children, instead of on their phones or on their computers, every single day, no matter what the weather is, are out there on their bikes, playing together. Like, it's like old time, like when I was a kid. And you don't get to see that often. And that's what cul-de-sac living does. And that's why, if it's the term, I think the percentage you guys use, it's worth 20% more. To me, it's worth way more than that. To still be able to have that quality of life, like old times, it's worth it. And to make the cul-de-sac safe is important, but please don't do away with that. And it has nothing to do with money, because one way or another, if there's land to build, someone will figure out a way to build on it. So why not do single-family homes and do cul-de-sacs and meet the rules that the board sets? I appreciate the time.
Thanks,
Thank
sir.
you.
Any other comments, public comments? Attorney McCann? And just before, Josh, the subdivision rules are available online, is that?
If they aren't, anyone who emails me, I think I've sent them to Attorney McCann, I believe. So, yeah.
But if not, anyone who
Yeah.
who wants a copy of them
Yep.
can, what's that?
Yeah, we should put it out for the public.
Yeah, they
Yep.
actually should be put out, yeah.
Yeah, I will check to make sure tomorrow.
They-
Check to make
they
sure they're
should-
on.
We will put them online. We'll put them online tomorrow if they are not online
Yeah,
already.
exactly.
Perfect, thank you, Brian. Okay, Attorney McCann?
Thank you very much, Nancy McCann. Local counsel on many of the subdivisions that you've seen over the last couple of decades, I guess. Very quickly, a few points. Number one, these are proposed subdivision rules and regulations. This is not a zone change. These are not applicable until they're adopted, and they have not been adopted yet. So I think I want to make that clear, that these are not
I see.
applicable now to any application that might come in. Secondly, I think doing away with completely dead-end streets would certainly be a mistake. Danvers does already have a limitation on dead-end streets of 600 feet, and this board has, over the last 10, 20 years has frequently waived that, but it is a waiver requirement, and we have to come in and demonstrate how, by waiving that 600-foot limitation, we're not running afoul of some of the concerns that were listed here. But complete prohibition of a dead-end street is not something I have seen in any other town, I don't think, but certainly I think would be a mistake here. And finally, the section regarding security and bonding, I will be looking at that in a bit more detail, but I asked that the planning board and planning staff look at that because Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81U is very specific with regard to covenants and security and the developer's rights. And the developer does have significant rights with regard to security, how it's secured. And of course, given some of the recent history with some of the subdivisions, it's important for the town to be secure and to have that security. But the developer has rights too, and we just want to make sure that what's being proposed does not conflict with the developer's rights under the subdivision control law itself.
Okay,
That's it. Thank you.
great, thank you. Any other comments from the public on this? Okay, any other coming back from the board? Any other comments on this? I would, if not, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to our next planning board meeting, which would be
Tuesday, November 26th.
November 26th, Tuesday, November 26th.
So moved.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to continue?
Second.
Second. Okay, first by Jim, second by Mike. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, motion passes, so it's continued. Okay, let's go back to the agenda here. Okay, the next agenda item, so this is not a public hearing, but it's with respect to Trask Lane partial release of covenant. Request for a partial release of a covenant established on August 28th, 1972, which is associated with the definitive subdivision plan entitled Proposed Access to Folly Hill Development, Danvers, Mass., and dated June 2nd, 1972, and also known as Trask Lane, Danvers, Mass. And I think we have the applicant here, and I think that there's, in terms of talking with staff, I think we're going to be hearing a little bit from the applicant and having some further discussions.
That's correct.
Yes, good evening, members of the board. My name is Miranda Samasco. I'm an attorney at Glovsky & Glovsky in Beverly, representing the applicant before the board this evening, Corcoran Trask Lane LLC, in conjunction with Folly Hill Associates Trust, which is the underlying owner of the property. I believe we have with us this evening various members of the team, including Peter Mahoney and Tim Corcoran, both from the applicant, JMC Corcoran. And we also have Rebecca Brown from Greenman Peterson, the traffic consultant for this project. And finally, we have attorney Dan Bailey from Pierce Atwood, who is transaction counsel and also handling the state permitting for this project. This evening, the request is for actually a partial release of a 1972 subdivision covenant that was approved in connection with Trask Lane. And here we have a copy highlighting the section of Trask Lane that was the subject of this subdivision plan. It's about 750 feet and connects access from Route 128 to Trask Lane in Beverly. And our records indicate that the roadway was constructed in accordance with the subdivision plan in the early 1970s, around 1972 to 1974. More or less contemporaneously with the network of other subdivisions such as Upland Drive, Wayside Drive, Folly Hill Drive, all part of what used to be the Orchard, known as the Orchard Hill neighborhood. And here, I don't know if this is going to work. So again, the section of the road that that is before the board this evening is this 750-foot section of Trask Lane. The town line between Beverly and Danvers is right here. So the subdivision road stops. And then next slide, Rebecca. Okay, so here you can see the Trask Lane section in Danvers connecting to Trask Lane in Beverly. The current developments in this area include Folly Hill Apartments, which was the first development, as well as Apple Village, which came next. And there's also a condominium development, Cherry Hill Condominium, that's right in the middle. The remainder of the site remains undeveloped, and Corcoran, the applicant, has entered into a purchase and sale agreement to purchase the property and to develop it with a high-density residential project. This area of Beverly specifically is zoned now for high-density residential use. The applicant has a zoning freeze in place that allows the prior zoning from 2016 to apply here, and we are proceeding under that zoning with a conforming project to that zoning. A couple of things to say about the development. As you can see, there are two sites that are proposed, Site A and Site B, a total of 6 buildings with a total number of 440 units currently proposed. All located in Beverly, none in Danvers. All access to this project will be via Trask Lane. There are no connections proposed to either the neighborhoods in Beverly or in Danvers, so it's one way in, one way out. There are 2 emergency access ways that exist, one here and one roughly in this area, going to the Raymond Farms section of Beverly. It's purposefully a very compact design. More than 67 acres, or close to 80% of the site, will be undisturbed. And one of the things that allows is a significant buffer between the construction and any of the residential neighborhoods in Danvers. The project is subject to review in Beverly by the Planning Board. And it is also subject to review by the Conservation Commission in Beverly. And most significantly, this project will require full MEPA review. In fact, that review is already underway. And as a component of that review, there will be a very detailed and extensive review by Mass DOT on traffic impacts, specifically relating to Route 128. So that is the project, and why we're here before you in Danvers is because this covenant remains outstanding. It was discovered during due diligence for the project and requires us to close it out in order to proceed and get title and financing for the project. So the covenant itself, I'm not going to go into the details this evening. I just wanted to give you an overview. It includes 23 conditions in all. There are 2 types of conditions. The first chunk really relate to construction conditions that would have been applicable at the time of construction. So that's one set. The second set are some continuing conditions that have relevance for the site even after the roadway is constructed. The first set of conditions, the construction conditions, we submitted a detailed summary in support of the board finding that conditions 1 through 12, 13, and 16 have all been completed when the construction was done in the 1970s. As part of tonight's proceedings, we hope that we can get some direction from the planning board to the town's engineering department to review the completion. We're not sure that that has been initiated yet, and to report back to the board, and then we can ask, proceed to talk about those findings at the next meeting, hopefully.
Just a clarifying question.
Sure.
So in terms of request completion, at least with respect to the items that you interpret as being completed, was that what you mean?
Yes, there are certain conditions. For example, no construction can occur past the hours of 7 p.m., or that the roadway be constructed in accordance with the subdivision plan. There were landscaping items, there was a fence, there are, a whole host of items that were part of that covenant, which you can determine on the ground that they are complete.
I see.
So we are asking the board to complete those, to release those conditions from the covenant going forward.
Okay.
There are also a group, as I said, of continuing conditions. For example, the covenant does not, or specifically requires that there be no other access to the land other than, no access through the neighborhoods to provide a second means of egress and access to the development. So that's a continuing condition. We read that as applying indefinitely. One of those conditions in particular is condition number 14. And that condition provides that so long as Trask Lane is the principal means of access to the site, which it is, then any new development of the remaining land in Beverly in excess of 554 units will require the Danvers Planning Board's review and approval. The existing developments, Apple Village, Folly Hill, and Cherry Hill, total in the aggregate 554, so our project trips that review.
Okay.
It's important to note that the covenant provides that, and I think we can see it right here,
And you said that was provision, was that 13?
14.
14.
So it basically provides that the approval of the town's planning board will be restricted to considerations of traffic safety on ways within its jurisdiction. And I think that's an important concept for this evening's deliberations and going forward. We are here this evening understanding that the board would like to review the project under Section 14. To facilitate this review, the applicant provided a detailed traffic impact and assessment study by Greenman Peterson, which has been, I think, preliminarily reviewed by planning staff. We basically provided the same traffic study that was provided to MIPA and to the city of Beverly as part of site plan review, with some focus on particular items in Danvers related to Trask Lane and the adjacent subdivisions that would be of interest to this board and within its jurisdiction. We, certainly understand that a project of this size is going to generate a significant amount of interest and discussion, and that there will likely be all sorts of questions relating to the density, whether it's appropriate, and to traffic, and extending well beyond the site. And in fact, planning staff has already suggested that peer review studies be performed on the interchanges to the north and south of Trask Lane, including Route 1A in Beverly. As we sort of set the table for this discussion, we would like to be on the record in terms of two important points. First, as I just said, under Section 14, and of the express terms of the covenant, as well as the subdivision control law itself, the board's jurisdiction, both in 1972 and today, is narrowly and specifically related to, quote, considerations of traffic safety, and those considerations should have a particular focus on the Danvers section of Trask Lane and the immediately adjacent public ways that are within the board's jurisdiction, meaning Upland, Wayside, and the intersections with Trask Lane. We do not read the covenant as giving this board authority to have wholesale review of this project, or any review outside of the limited topic of traffic safety. And nor do we find authority under the covenant or the subdivision control law for this board to deny approval of the project by virtue of a 50-year-old subdivision plan covenant. We do want to emphasize that this project is going to receive extensive review, and that the town of Danvers has a voice through the MIPA process and has already submitted comments to MIPA. We anticipate that there will be further comments as the process evolves, and that those comments will be reviewed be reviewed by MIPA and Department of Transportation, which ultimately has the jurisdiction over Route 128 and the interchanges. So I think with that, what we had proposed, if the board finds that this is appropriate, we'd like to have a short overview of the traffic study that has been submitted, and that would be given by Rebecca Brown from Greenman Peterson.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Again, she can just identify herself when she speaks, just for minutes purposes again.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Brown from Greenman Peterson. We're located in Wilmington, Massachusetts. And I just want to make sure everyone in the room can hear me okay. The microphone's loud enough and everything for you.
I think I'm getting some head nods, yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. So I'm just going to walk you through kind of quickly the traffic study that was put together and what the findings of that study were. As Miranda mentioned, this has been submitted also to the City of Beverly and will soon be submitted to MIPA with some additional revisions coming out of the ENF process. As part of the traffic study, I'll kind of walk through sort of what the site access and egress is that's proposed, the study area that was looked at and what was included in the traffic study, and how traffic volumes were projected. The results of the safety review that was performed for the study area intersections, and what the general traffic impacts were on the surrounding area intersections, and then what we saw for recommendations for proposed off-site improvements. So I know Miranda kind of already walked you through what the site sort of looks like here. But as she mentioned, there is Site A that will have 4 of the residential buildings up in this area. Site B will have 2 of the residential buildings located down here in this area, with all of the access and egress coming through Trask Lane for residential traffic. There will be 2 emergency vehicle access points in and out of the neighborhood. Both of those are already existing. One is through Oberlin Road, through the Folly Hill development here. And then the second one is through Manor Way, through Apple Village, that comes down and out onto County Street and over toward Elliott Street out through this direction here as well. So those are the only access and egress points for this development. The study area that we looked at essentially included the interchange at Route 128 with Elliott Street. Because the development is really only accessible from Route 128 northbound, we do anticipate that this interchange will be heavily used for people who are sort of coming from the north that want to get to the site, that will come off this exit, turn around and get back on to go northbound to get to the Trask Lane and Wayside Drive interchange. Because of the proximity of the two interchange intersections to the State Road intersection and Liberty Street intersection, we also did study those. They operate as a coordinated signal system. And in fact, the State Road and the Route 128 southbound ramps operate on the same traffic control signal. Then we did also look at all of the ramp intersections here coming off of Route 128 into the neighborhood, including the merge and diverge sections at the ramps with Route 128, as well as the internal intersections in the neighborhood. We were also asked to study the intersections here at Conant Street, Liberty Street, and Burley Street that kind of form this sort of triangular intersection here. But as we went through and reviewed further in the trip generation and how we anticipated vehicles getting to the site, we really don't anticipate that any vehicles will be coming through this intersection based on the routing of trips, which you will see in a couple of slides. So we did collect traffic volumes at all of those study area intersections in accordance with Mass DOT standards and general engineering practice. We did study the weekday morning and weekday evening commuter peak periods, as well as the Saturday midday peak period. All of the traffic volumes were collected in 2023 in June, September, and October, which are all generally considered to be above average months where school is in session and you don't get a lot of impacts from winter weather at that time. We did project out traffic volumes to a 7-year design horizon based on a 1% per year growth rate, which was found to be conservative in comparison to what traffic volumes in the area have actually been growing at. And although we know that the cell signaling business is proposed to be relocated, we do expect that that building could be reoccupied in the future with a similar use. So we have not taken any credit or applied any reduction in trips for the cell signaling being relocated. In terms of how much traffic the proposed development would generate, on a daily basis, we anticipate that the development would generate about 2,200 vehicle trips, and that represents about 1,100 vehicles coming in and 1,100 vehicles going out throughout the day via the Trask Lane interchange. During the peak hours, that would be roughly an additional 200 vehicles, where the majority of those would be leaving in the morning as they're exiting to go to work and returning in the evening when they're coming back home. We do anticipate that roughly 35% of the traffic will be coming from the north in Beverly down Route 128 to get to the site, where all of those vehicles will need to come off of the interchange here at exit 43, turn around and get back on to the northbound ramp. We do also anticipate that another 35% will be coming from Route 128 to the south. The actual traffic on local roadways, we expect to be in the range of 30% in total along Elliott Street to the north and south and along Liberty Street coming into this interchange here. And these percentages were developed based on a journey to work gravity model that looked at where people living in this area here are currently working. And based on those percentages, what we see here is increases on Liberty Street of about 9 to 10 vehicles. That's in a two-way traffic flow along Liberty Street during each of the peak hours. And then along Elliott Street, we see lesser increases of 18 to 20 vehicles sort of to the north, and 28 to 30 vehicles to the south, which really represents one additional vehicle every 1 to 2 minutes along Elliott Street, with one additional vehicle every 6 minutes or so on Liberty Street. So once we projected traffic volumes through the study area intersections, we also did a review of the collision history based on Mass DOT crash data for the years 2017 to 2019, which at the time that this was done was the most recent 3 years of consecutive data that was available that didn't include the 2020 COVID conditions. And what we saw was that there were really only 2 high crash locations that were located in the study area, one being at the Burley Street and Conant Street intersection here, where there was a high number of angle type collisions that were occurring at that location. Again, we do not anticipate sending any vehicle trips through that intersection, so we don't anticipate having any impact on the crash occurrence at that location. The other location was here at the Route 128 northbound ramps with Elliott Street, where some improvements have recently been constructed since that collision data was recorded, that involved installation of new signal equipment along this stretch of Elliott Street, as well as installation of some do not block the box signage and pavement markings through the intersection here. And we do anticipate that those improvements will reduce the occurrence of collisions at that location. At the request of Mass DOT, we're in the process of reviewing updated collision data from 2021 to 2023, post-construction of the improvements at that location, to see if that has reduced the occurrence of traffic collisions. And we anticipate submitting that information as part of the DEIR for MEPA review when that does go through. This diagram here is showing sort of the traffic operations or the level of service at each of the study area intersections. Where green essentially means good, the intersection's operating at level of service A with very minimal delay in the 2031 build condition. Where red condition means a level of service F, where there's some capacity constraints at those intersections. So the only intersections where we do see levels of service F occurring are at the intersections along Conant Street, where again, we don't anticipate sending any vehicle trips through Conant Street to get to and from the site, as it's not on a direct route. There are easier ramps to get on and off of to the north, rather than traveling through Conant Street. So we don't anticipate having any impact here. So when you look at the number that's in the box here, that's showing the increase in delay through each of those study area intersections. Where we do have the greatest impact, obviously, is for the left turn coming off of the ramp here from Route 128, where we are increasing the delay there by 54 seconds. And then the left turn getting onto the ramp here, where the development would be increasing the delay by 50 seconds. So that's where we're seeing really the most substantial increase in delay through any of the study area intersections. All of the other intersections are all operating at acceptable levels of service today and will continue to operate well in the future, with minimal impacts in delay of 2 seconds per vehicle or less. What we are proposing to do is some signal timing and safety enhancements along this section of Elliott Street, where we would be modifying the existing signal timing here to optimize the timings at each of these intersections. And then because we were seeing some issues with the safety of some of the intersections and angled collisions, what we noticed is that the do not block the boxes at these intersections really weren't striped far enough back to actually block traffic within the intersection. So we've proposed extending those do not block the boxes a little bit further to further reduce vehicles pulling through the angled collisions and some of the additional delay that happens there because of traffic being blocked. With implementation of those improvements, all of the study area intersections would return to a level of service D or better, which is generally considered to be the design goal for an intersection. And with that, we wouldn't be increasing delay on any of the movements through any of the study area intersections by more than 8 seconds per vehicle. The other area where we are looking at some improvements, although all of these intersections coming on and off the interchange are anticipated to operate at acceptable levels of service. When we met with Mass DOT recently, prior to our DEIR filing with MIPA, they had requested that we review kind of the safety and geometrics of this interchange to propose some enhancements at this location. So some of the improvements that we're looking at is here's Wayside Drive right here, and you can see that there are really 2 ramps that come off into the neighborhood, one coming off first onto Wayside Drive, which is an egress only from Route 128, and then the second one being an egress and an access onto 128, right opposite where Trask Lane joins in. This one coming off Wayside Drive is very confusing, although there are signs out there that say that it is one way. The stop line is only striped across half of the roadway here, and there aren't any do not enter signs. There's just the one-way signs located here. So it could be confusing to someone who's unfamiliar with the area that may not understand that they're not supposed to turn on to the highway in that location. So what we plan to do is extend the stop line across the entire intersection to reinforce that that is a one-way, and install proper do not enter signs on either side of the road, and then which would be right at the intersection itself. And then in this area right here, we would install the wrong way signs that you're seeing Mass DOT install on all of the ramps now, to indicate to drivers that they're traveling the wrong way if they do happen to turn by accident onto that roadway. The other thing that they've asked us to look at is installing a type of sort of a channelization coming off of Route 128 here with striping that would indicate to people that this clearly is an exit. So if someone turns on here, they'll see that they're not physically able to make this right-hand turn to get onto the highway. They had asked us to do that with striping or some type of flush island, so that in the event that an emergency vehicle needed to get access onto the highway in this location, that they could do that. Down at this end here, this will remain fairly consistent with what it looks like today, with the exception of there is some unraveling of the pavement along each of these edges here. And when this island here was last striped, it wasn't striped to standards, so you can kind of see that they just sort of painted a line straight across here, and as a result, drivers are coming around this corner driving over this line. So we would repair the striping in this island here to what it should actually be to allow for these turns, and then repair the pavement edge, widening this out just a little bit to provide a sliver of a shoulder there, so that as vehicles are traveling around that corner, as you know, delivery vehicles and stuff go around that corner, that they're not dragging the rear of the vehicle off the edge of the pavement. Down at this intersection here at Trask Lane and Wayside Drive, there's very limited improvements that are actually being proposed at this location. We would just install some upgraded stop lines on both the Trask Lane northbound approach and Wayside Drive approaches to the intersection with new stop signs. Currently, the Trask Lane northbound is free flowing, and there's a right turn arrow here that seems to imply that people aren't allowed to make a left-hand turn into the neighborhood. However, they are actually allowed to do that. This is really intended to indicate that drivers are supposed to stay to the right of the striped island in here. So we would be fixing that, replacing the signage so that it's clear that vehicles are intended to stay to the right of the island, that they are allowed to make this left-hand turn movement, but that they would be required to stop first before doing that to ensure that they can see oncoming traffic coming off of the highway. There are a number of transportation demand management measures that we're also looking at to further reduce the number of trips that would be generated by this development and reduce the amount of impact, including the provision of on-site amenities such as gyms and things like that on the site, pools, so that residents can make use of those rather than having to go off-site for those types of amenities. The neighborhood itself already has a number of recreational walking and biking trails that we would provide connections to, and establishing new pedestrian routes along the site so that people can make use of that for recreation. We're also investigating now the extension of the CATA bus route number 8 down into the site that already goes into the Folly Hill development as a means of allowing people to make use of that bus route, which does also have service to the Cummings Center and to the commuter rail as well at Beverly Depot Station. One of the things that we're evaluating is the potential for a shuttle service that would go directly to Depot Station without the need to go to multiple other stops like the bus route would. Preliminarily, it's looking like we might be able to get a 10 to 15% reduction in trips associated with a shuttle service. So we're looking at whether or not that is economical before evaluating whether we can do that. And then the last thing that we looked at the request of the City of Beverly was to provide a grocery service on the site to help reduce the need for people within the neighborhood to go off-site or to go out onto Route 128 to go get some milk or eggs or something like that that they need for quick service. So we did an evaluation of trips that would be generated based on providing some type of grocery service for use by the neighborhood, and found that it would actually increase the trips that would be generated by the development by about 20% over having just the residential development itself. So based on that, we're not proposing any type of grocery or convenience use on the site. It would remain just the residential development. So conclusions drawn from the traffic study, as I mentioned, the development is anticipated to generate just under 200 total trips during the peak hours. We anticipate that about 9 to 30 of those would be on local roads, so roughly one additional vehicle every 2 to 6 minutes on the local roadways, and the majority of the traffic increases would be on the highway itself. The greatest impact that we would have would be on the Route 128 and Elliott Street ramps, where we are proposing some signal timing and safety enhancements that bring the levels of service there back down to better than no build conditions, to a level of service D or better. We're looking at some safety enhancements at the Route 128 Wayside Drive and Trask Lane interchange, as well as some transportation demand management measures to help further reduce the trips and the impacts, which we will continue to vet those enhancements and TDM measures through the MEPA DEIR process. And with the mitigation, as I mentioned, all of the movements along Elliott Street through the Route 128 interchange would be improved to a better than no build condition, and the maximum increase in delay that we would see at any of the study area intersections would be 4 seconds per vehicle or less. So that concludes my presentation of the traffic study and the impacts that we're seeing as a result of the project. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, sounds good. I think just the way we'll go this, in terms of if we have some questions from the board, I do want to hear from town staff as well, just in terms of, I guess, before we go to the board with any questions. I do want to I understand that we do have a number of people who are here today. This is not a public hearing, so this is a request for a release of a covenant on Trask Lane. So this is not a what we typically might see for like a subdivision request or such, where there's actually, where it's a public hearing. So this is really to get information, and also I want to hear a little bit in terms of from town staff. So in terms of what are the parameters that we're looking at here, and I know that there are some traffic mitigation issues we wanted to,
Well,
Josh or Brian, whatever.
yeah. I mean, I guess I could start. So I think the big piece, I guess, as the attorney for the development team mentioned, we're looking at, from a Danvers, the project's in Beverly, but
Right.
but it obviously has impacts to Danvers, and we're looking at the covenant that was discussed at the beginning,
The 1972 covenant. Mm-hmm.
1972 covenant, what is the traffic, that's a focal point for the board, is what is, the traffic impact of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's certainly a focal point on this one. In terms of, there's been a traffic report that's been generated.
So that's staff's view in terms of our purview today, is respect to traffic.
That's, if not the main,
Mm-hmm.
other than the other covenant, that's the covenant, which we went through item by item.
Sure.
If the fences were installed, if the bushes were installed, when you read it, it's like, there's, anything above the 554 that was built in the 70s, they have to come back to the planning board, and they have to look at the impact of
You
traffic.
have to speak up. I can't really hear you.
Yeah. Anything above the 554, which the 554 units that were built in the 70s, the development team has to come back to the planning board and review what the traffic impact would be if anything above that number.
Right. Okay. Got it. Okay. I think we have some questions for the applicant or the traffic consultant. Jim?
I've got some questions. Yeah, sure. I think, do we, as the staff, have the ability to get DTAC involved to look at because this is the major impact. Again, we were talking in the first hour about, connectivity of roads, and this is a huge, cul-de-sac, if you will, that connects. There's no connection to 62. Could we have our town DTAC look at it and see if they might have recommendations? I mean, just looking at it myself, knowing the history from when Overlook Drive came in and its effect on Vista Drive and those 48 lots that we approved back then, when they first came in, there was the concept of connecting to 62, and at that time, there was land that was available for that. At the time, the neighborhood, Vista Drive neighborhood, those folks did not want to have people cutting through from 62 to head north on 128, cutting through their neighborhood. So that was a big motivation for avoiding that. However, I'm wondering if this particular developer would be able to gain access to 62 to access this development to try to take off some of the pressure on 128. Is there any land available that they could kind of get through to the Beverly side of 62?
Well, there is land available. That is where one of the emergency access routes travels, and it's allowed for emergency egress. But in the same way that the Vista Drive neighborhood and the other neighborhoods around Overland did not want to see that as a cut-through, the folks on the other side on County Way are not eager to see that as any sort of connection either going through their neighborhood. So, and I think it's questionable whether the access that we have would be sufficient to do that. But we've also been under very, I think the city of Beverly in initial comments has made it clear that they would not support that.
Okay, so I just wanted to be sure that you looked at it. I mean, you could make it unattractive to be a cut-through. You could put speed bumps and curvy roads to kind of prevent people from doing that they use that in some towns and cities to kind of slow down the traffic.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that it was something that was feasible, but it's just not, given the constraints that have been put on this property over the years as more conditions have been put on.
Okay, if we could get up, the traffic study, could she focus on the plan where the access comes to 128 when you have Wayside along with the other roadway there? So Wayside, is there a way, and maybe you can't tell me, but maybe the DTAC and Danvers could tell me, is there a way that we could make that 2 ways? Wouldn't that take some pressure off the people on Vista Drive and in those neighborhoods if they could access before they even get to this new heavily traveled, more traveled roadway, and just use that as kind of a neighborhood access and egress? Why not make it both ways? What's wrong with that? It seems to be wide enough.
Rebecca, I think that last one was, yeah, right there.
Yeah, so you're asking why not make this 2 ways?
Yes.
It's really has to do with the distance between this point here and this point here. So what that would essentially do is have a very short weaving section for vehicles in and out of this lane. As vehicles are kind of, traveling up through to get off onto Trask Lane, and vehicles are also trying to get on and then merge over to stay onto Route 128. So the distance between those two is really too short to have 2 interchanges in close proximity.
Okay. And can you just review, you talked a little bit about public transportation. Did you say they're going to expand the bus service or the public transportation to that development?
So, yeah, so that's what we're currently investigating and would like to have done, is extend the bus route down into the development itself, so that the Cata bus could come in, travel to the end of Trask Lane, essentially turn around at the cul-de-sac that's proposed there at the end of Trask Lane, and then stop at a stop that would be near Site B, continue up to where the bus currently stops in the Folly Hill development, and then exit out, as opposed to having to make a U-turn in the middle of Trask Lane or within the development like it does today. It does not extend the travel time substantially for that bus route, and provides a number of additional customers that could use it. So it does seem like something that CATA would support, but obviously we need to go through that process. And like I mentioned before, we'll continue vetting that throughout the MEPA review process.
And of the proposed new units, how many, do we have an idea, like the breakdown of how many will be 2 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms? So I'm thinking toward buses for school-aged children. Do we have an idea on that?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I don't know whether folks from Corcoran have that handy. We can certainly provide it at the next meeting. There's a wide distribution of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. There's a smattering of 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
What is the total units? Do you know that number?
It's 440
Between all buildings?
between all buildings. Yep.
That's all I have at the moment. I'm just wondering if maybe we could seek to get input from DTAC. I think it's within our purview.
Yeah, I think we could, and I know that town staff is also, has also addressed the question of doing a peer review of the traffic report as well. So I think more information, the better. So, yeah. So, Tim, do you have any questions at all for the?
Yeah, following up on one thing that Jim said. So it sounds like there was consideration for the emergency access road right now, which connects to County Way, being the other point of access, correct? And that was denied.
Correct. From the outset, that's been a hard
So-
no in Beverly.
Got it. So it looks like that road goes through 134 McKay Street in order to get access. So that's Beverly Golf and Tennis to get to County Way. I'm pretty sure, I can see the map. I'm pretty sure that's where it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure whether it actually goes through golf and tennis.
Yeah, so towards the right side of the plot line there, you can see the road, the dotted line. What's right next to you is Beverly Golf and Tennis. Not actually
Yeah,
through
well, I
a
think
through a fairway.
golf
though.
and tennis is up here.
Yep, but it's their property.
Yeah, this is Beverly.
So is it right that, because the city of Beverly owns
That's
that
correct.
plot, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a municipal golf course.
Gotcha. So the city of Beverly is who said that the access road can't go through that land to County Way, correct?
Correct.
See, because I see the bitter irony that a weird old covenant for a small tract of land in Danvers holds so much sway for the approval of such a big site in Beverly. But it's only that way because that's being rejected as what seems to me like a much more logical road to access that site than putting everyone through the highway. So out of our control, but I just sort of wanted to ask the question for context, make sure we understood exactly why there was only one point of access in Danvers is because of the city of Beverly.
Yes, and there were likewise, I do believe that there were likewise discussions at one time about additional access into the Orchard Hill neighborhood, and maybe there's the Folly Hill neighborhood as well to the south. And I think Danvers was equally clear that they didn't not want that access, so.
Okay. If for the record, the road does appear to go through the woods, not through a fairway, so they can still play golf if they want. So in terms of the traffic study, for Trask Lane, I think I saw the numbers in the report and in the slide. It looked like it was going to be doubling the amount of traffic. Is that right?
Yeah. That's what I saw as well. It seemed like there was existing.
Yep.
Was
The
like
table.
I didn't
Close
see
to
it
double.
in the slides, I don't think, but I think between the report and here, it was double.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so this isn't existing, so this is entering and exiting trips that we're showing
Right.
in
So
this
it was,
figure.
I was looking at the weekday peak. Looked like it was about in the 110 range, existing, and so it was adding an additional about double.
It's entering and exiting, it's not existing.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying that the report here,
Right. Those
Yeah.
are new
The report
trips.
in the packet.
what's currently happening is about 100. What will be added is about 100 more. Which, do you have a slide here that just shows us the current number of trips and then the added number of trips?
I think it's page 8 or something of the
I don't, but I
transportation
can
study.
actually pull that up.
Yeah, because I'm doing the math
relatively
between
quickly for
looking
you.
at your slides and looking at the PDF, so that's probably why it's confusing.
Yeah, Tim, I think it was like on page 8 or something of the traffic impact. Let me see here. Traffic impact study. I may have misspoke. Let's see.
No.
Yeah,
Little
actually
bit more than
existing, I have
eight
at
in.
page 13 of the PDF,
Thank you.
which has, I believe here, the daily I saw, weekday was 2560. Saturday daily was 2290 for existing. And so I compared it to what we saw in the PowerPoint, which was, I think, 2,200 additional trips.
And if you're looking at, so if you're looking here at these daily volumes,
Yes.
this is on Trask Lane between Upland Road and Apple Road.
Okay.
So that's not what's coming necessarily on and off the interchange. That's further down on Trask Lane. But if you look at figures 2, 3, and 4, that shows you the peak hour volumes that are traveling through the interchange. And I can, zoom in a little bit on this so you can read them better. So in the morning, it's about 119 vehicles that are coming off, with 16 coming off at Wayside Drive, and then almost 200 getting on there. When we move to the PM peak hour, it's a few more coming off on Wayside Drive. There's about 44 there, 131 coming off onto Trask Lane, and 188 getting on the highway.
Okay.
And then this is showing you the Saturday midday condition, which looks fairly similar to the PM condition. A little bit more people off than on.
Yeah, so if that's the existing, and then the slide we were just looking at says it's adding about anywhere between 113 to 130 something, it's, or 180, yeah, 152. We're talking about nearly doubling.
Yeah, the volume that's getting onto the highway is pretty close to the total volume, so we're increasing closer to about 40%, 35 to 40% on those volumes.
Well, you can forgive my bad
But
math.
yes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's 40% still a pretty substantial increase for a pretty small road like that. I think the other interchange on Elliott Street, and just to correct me, sure I'm understanding, maybe this is a question for staff. So if the covenant is related to Trask Lane, but it says that we have the purview about traffic impact, does that also include consideration for traffic impact on Elliott Street, since that also is in Danvers?
I mean, in staff's opinion, we think that that could be included in the peer review. In staff's opinion, we think that that could be part of the peer review, but.
Part of the traffic peer review, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I would just, if I may, restate our view that under the actual wording of the covenant, it's traffic safety within the board's jurisdiction. And I would submit that the board does not have jurisdiction to recommend mitigation for Route 128 or the interchanges off of Route 128. And I also think that when this covenant was crafted in 1972, the board was specifically looking at infrastructure directly adjacent to Trask Lane. In fact, there's a condition in the covenant that talks about an assessment as to whether a traffic control device would be needed at the intersection of Upland Drive and Trask Lane, and that the applicant was on the hook to provide funds for peer review for a study to review the necessity of that traffic study. I do not think that in 1972 the board was thinking that a future board would have jurisdiction over roadway that is controlled by the state DOTs.
Sure.
Just as a different, looking at it, I mean, earlier in the conversation, it said, Rebecca mentioned that Elliott Street was going to be, which is a road in the town of Danvers, that will be the most negatively impacted road from this whole project.
Yeah, and,
So
and
how
I would
could
just jump in to say I disagree with that assessment. You're taking a very narrow view of it, because if a new development that is coming off of Trask Lane can have the impact pushing traffic all the way back into roads in Danvers, I think we should consider that. There aren't going to be very many opportunities like this where there is one little change, it's a big machine, you screw up one little corner of it, it's going to have repercussions throughout the town. So I do think that we should consider it throughout the town. I just want to make sure that I wasn't way out of line on that one. In terms of the Elliott Street, I mean, I live up Burley Street, and so I come down State Road and go through that intersection, and it stinks. It is always very backed up. The gridlock is bad. So your point about the block the box is well taken. Is that the only improvement that's happening to get from the minute delay that was on the first estimate versus the mitigated estimate, which is only a few seconds of delay added?
That's, so we'd be doing the do not block the box, as well as signal timing improvements that would go from the State Road intersection all the way down to Liberty Street intersection. That would really sort of maximize the green time. So once you kind of enter those 4 intersections, you should keep a green signal as you get through all 4 intersections. So that really helps the progression of traffic throughout each one.
Well, I would definitely personally appreciate that improvement. I do think it is really worth the peer review study that we're talking about, because that is a huge improvement you're estimating. I think it's really important to make sure that's vetted and true. Okay, no other questions.
Great. Jean, do you have any questions or?
Yeah. Sorry. So I'm also interested in the Elliott Street intersection, echoing what Tim said. It already operates poorly, and I know we just approved a daycare on Liberty Street going through that intersection, and I looked up the traffic report for that project, and it was 479 vehicle trips per day. So I think if we get a peer review, maybe we should add that development in as well.
Okay. Anything further, Jean?
No.
Mike?
Josh, I guess a question for staff. So I guess in terms of our purview, does this something that we need to kind of vote to approve the traffic? Because it just seems like, not to be negative, but Beverly's kind of gaining all the good things of this, and then Danvers is kind of just dealing with all the bad things with it. Like, we're just getting the traffic, but I'm just trying to understand, like, do we need to approve this traffic? Because I understand they're saying they don't want traffic going down County Way or whatever, but then at the same point, isn't our planning board saying, well, we don't want traffic going down our roads? So I'm just trying to understand, like, what we're actually able to do.
Certainly unique. It's a unique circumstance, right? I think we're trying to evaluate the traffic impact of this project on this section of Danvers, and particularly this section of Danvers. So
When you say this section of Danvers, traffic impact,
yeah, like the intersections that we're looking at that are in the town of Danvers that are impacted, we're interested in how this project will impact them.
Mhm.
And so I think that's we're supposed to analyze and look at, which is why a recommendation, we can get into it, is to have a peer reviewer look through the traffic report, potentially give us some more recommendations that would that could benefit us.
Mhm.
So,
And Josh, how would it, in terms of the peer review, how would that work? So there'd be a peer review that would review the traffic study,
yes,
and then they would offer recommendations,
they would work for the board,
right?
and they would provide recommendations, review the traffic report if they agree, disagree with what's been presented, and very similar conversation to sort of what we're having tonight, but it would be, someone who is an expert in this topic who could provide, technical assistance for our questions and comments. So.
I don't disagree with that. I guess I'm just asking that if they also tell us there's going to be delays at Elliott Street and delays on Trask Street and stuff like that, what is our next steps in terms of a board? Do we have anything that we can do?
I think we're just going to try and do the best we can, I guess. I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see, what is in the report,
Yeah, because it seems like in past projects, we can talk about traffic in Danvers and people have lots of comments, but I guess my question is, when we're doing that, we're gaining benefits of housing or
Sure.
taxes or things like that, and this
Sure.
one is obviously very unique in the sense that we're kind of getting nothing out of it in a positive sense, so that's why I'm curious what our standing is on that. So
Yeah, I mean, I think
If I
this,
may, I might make an argument that you're in fact getting the benefit of a significant slug of housing that's regional without school impacts, without utility impacts. So I think there's a strong argument to be made that this is a regional project in that sense. It's regional housing. And Beverly bears the brunt of the impacts as opposed to Danvers in this case.
I think it just depends on the lens at which you view this, right?
Yeah.
I think you could look at it from different.
Okay.
Some folks would say we are getting the pros and we are getting we're getting the pros and the cons. It just depends.
Sure.
So.
I mean, I think it's worth getting, I think in addition to, having traffic peer review on this, I think getting some comments, I think from our, potentially getting some input from DTAC, is that, the Danvers Traffic Advisory
Yeah,
Committee.
Jim mentioned that
As Jim
earlier. Since I've been here, we haven't done that, but I'd be interested. I could talk to Aaron about. He chairs that committee, I believe.
We've
I
used them, yeah.
could talk to Aaron about it tomorrow, what that process would be, and if they give letters or comments, or I'm just not sure. We've never done a project like this going to DTAC. It's generally kind of smaller, more local thing. Folks in town wanting stop signs, wanting crosswalks, that type of thing. But I can obviously reach out to Aaron tomorrow about it.
Well, I think it's a major impact on already very congested areas. I'm wondering, just if we could ask the traffic person, do we have any estimate of queuing on Trask Lane at the high peak hours? And I know you talked about that, the box area as it relates to Wayside, but do you have a projection of queuing at the 7:30, 8 o'clock hour in the morning that you're projecting? And should we, or could there be some type of remediation through either a signal or signage, or how can we help alleviate that? I don't know if we want to put more traffic lights, but there should be something to, because it may be very difficult to get out if you're trying to get out on Wayside. If you can't get out on Wayside on 128, so you have to get out on Trask.
Yeah, so you're talking about basically.
First thing in the
Let me
morning,
advance this to
everyone's
it.
trying to go to work or school. It's 7:30, 7 a.m., and you're all waiting at Trask Lane, and it's queued up because people are on 128 trying to go north to turn around to go south, and you've got a big long queue.
Yep.
How are you
I'm
gonna
just
deal
trying to
with
get to that page because I don't remember what the cues were right off the top of my head. But I will find that for you.
I also think the Beverly Danvers line on that map is incorrect. Just FYI.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it should include Trask Lane.
It did get shifted over. Yeah, so this line should be right up against the site
Oh.
here, and it looks like it got bumped over. But yeah, it should essentially be shifted right up through here.
Yep.
And then it starts coming in this direction in that area. So in terms of queuing, we were showing that at the intersection with Trask Lane and Wayside Drive, that there's only 1 to 2 vehicles queued up on either Wayside Drive or the Trask Lane sort of northbound approach there during any of the peak hours.
Presently?
Under build conditions.
Presently, or with the increase?
That's with the increase. Yeah.
On the high peak hours, you're only gonna have 2 cars queuing up? That seems kinda hard to believe, but.
Yeah, you're talking about right here, right at the Wayside Drive Trask Lane intersection.
Is that taking into account any mitigation measures you all are proposing, or that is without any mitigation?
That is taking into account the mitigation measures that we are proposing. Under existing conditions, it's pretty similar, though.
What's the peak on Trask Lane? Not Wayside, but Trask, to get onto the highway? What's the queue?
So
for
are
the peak
you
hours?
looking at the actual like Route 128 and the Trask Lane interchange there for that
Yes.
queuing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that analysis we had not included in our traffic impact and access study that went to the town. We have since been asked by Mass DOT to study that interchange there. But the way that it gets analyzed is as sort of a merge condition as traffic is coming in. So what happens, I advance this, you might be able to see it.
And again, you said you were asked by Mass
So what
DOT.
happens is vehicles don't actually have to yield. They come around here into their own lane. And then this lane continues up for a ways and then merges in with traffic. So this doesn't really queue back here because vehicles just come around this corner into their own lane and then they merge in with traffic. Now,
How
obviously,
long is
when
that? Do you know
128
how
gets
long that is?
backed up,
How long is that roadway where that, I know that's a relatively new thing, probably in the last, what?
that this comes into its
5-10
own
years.
lane. Off the top of my head, I don't know what that length is. I may be able to find out for you.
It looks like it's like 700 to 1,000 feet off Google
It
Maps.
seems about right, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to measure for you.
And even looking at car lengths there, it seems, yeah.
Yeah, so that came in the last probably 5-10 years, I think. Hasn't been there like that all the time. It's relatively new.
So that means there are people still waiting and thinking they have to yield.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, Gene just raised a good point. I think that there are probably people who, because it's relatively new, they probably still think that they have to yield. And they're waiting.
There may be
Yeah,
some.
that
Yeah,
happens.
it looks like it's about 1,000 feet long before it merges back in, based on Google Maps.
So you're gonna look into the queuing on that? You've been asked to do that?
Yeah, so we've been asked to analyze the merge condition through here.
so you can provide us with that information as well?
Yep, and it will go into the DEIR, which will be sent to the town as well.
Around when is that plan, around, what do you anticipate in terms of the timing for that, in terms of providing this information?
Right now, we're aiming for mid-December for submission of the DEIR into MIPA.
Okay. Mid-December.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
In listening to the back and forth, I wanted to make clear that I think we understand that peer review of the traffic impacts would be useful to the board. It's a big project.
Yes.
It's a 500-page report. We get it. I think what we'd like to be clear on and come out of this meeting, hopefully with some direction on, is what the scope of that peer review is. And also a timeline for when that might occur.
Okay.
And a timeline for when the engineering department might be expected to have comments on the covenant request.
Okay.
But we certainly understand that the board would actually benefit from having peer review and having some of these questions answered.
Yep. Okay. Josh, anything in terms of, I know in terms of questions with respect to engineering, as well as sort of the scope of the review?
Yeah. So the scope that was sent out to, other traffic consultant companies was, the trash lane in the immediate vicinity, and then also looking at the Elliott Street 62 interchange, and then actually also even the interchange in Beverly at 1A
Mm-hmm.
to the north. From this conversation, I
So
think
that's
it's
the scope of the review.
Josh, would it make sense to also include that Liberty Conan Street? I know they said there's no impact, but I know that intersection's not the safest intersection. I know a lot of people who get off at the Cherry Farm exit to avoid that whole Elliott Street exit, and they go that way. So me
Sure.
being one of them. I don't know if it's included in their report. I don't know why we wouldn't also include it in our report, but that's just my opinion.
I mean, we have a scope from a couple firms.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We recommended a firm in the packet. I mean, I think as planning staff that we're sort of, don't want to speak for Brian, but amenable to some type. Obviously, we have to share the scope with the development team.
Right.
I think we're sort of open to discussion about the scope if we can't. I have a written document. It's in your packet, all the peer reviews.
Right. I think what I see here is the, let's see here. I mean, study boundaries, 20 study area intersections. A general review of all intersections will be completed. However, as requested by the Town of Danvers Planning Board, primary focus will be on 128, exit 43 ramps, Elliott Street, Route 62, and Route 128, exit 45 ramps, Dodge Street, 1A. So it's,
Is it possible to get a copy of it? I have not seen this scope,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
I'm feeling
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
But I would say to the extent we were naming intersections in Beverly, I would just renew our objection on the record.
okay.
As I was saying, I think that we're sort of amenable from this conversation to make some tweaks to the scope. I think that, so I understand from the development team where they sit, they want to narrow it a little bit more, but I think we're open to a little bit of,
I think staff was concerned with respect to the, with doing a peer review of what was covered in the traffic, at least to a certain extent, what was in the traffic study. So that might be,
right.
which is more broad potentially than what, they may, agree should be covered by the
Right.
peer review.
Right.
Does that make sense, what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, we would agree that the traffic study we submitted because we were also submitting something to MIPA and to the
Sure.
town of Beverly, is broader than the jurisdiction of Danvers. But the board has heard me on that, and you will do as you see fit.
Okay. Very good. And in terms of, Josh, just in terms of some other areas, so, you know.
Oh, and then I could, yeah, the other, sorry, if you want me to answer a couple, the other questions.
Please, yeah.
Yep.
Sorry.
So
sorry.
in terms of engineering comments, you're referring to like the summary or memo, like the condition of the road. Is that what you mean by from engineering? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, we have submitted a memo that presents, for example, the road was built.
Yep.
Sure.
This was done. I would assume that the board wants verification of
Yep.
that from the engineering department.
Yes. So they have been working on a response memo or a kind of parallel memo
Okay.
that you're describing, describing the condition of the road and the things that have been constructed or not constructed, and then what was, I forget the other
So
question.
Josh, in terms of, so engineering is going to be working on something that if it's, 1, 2, 3, agree, don't agree, and so on, correct?
They currently have a draft or a process of documentation to what you're requesting. Yes.
Great.
And then the other question was time.
I guess timing.
Timing.
And just,
Yeah.
and I would also ask that things like memos and scopes be shared
Yep.
before the next meeting.
Yeah, of course. No, of
so
course.
that we have a chance to respond.
No, I mean, depending on how this, that's completely fine. Where I sat, or staff, we were recommending we do a traffic peer review. We decided to go that route. And the firm that we think might be the most appropriate, or we're recommending, they are not available on November 26th, our next meeting. So we were going to recommend to continue this item to the December 10th meeting.
So you have a firm that's responded that they can do the peer review?
Or they just indicated, hey, when they responded, hey, hey Josh, I'm interested in doing this, or I'm interested in submitting a quote. If I'm chosen, just by the way, I'm not available this week. So I just know that knowing that information, the 26th are not available. So,
Josh, do we have a meeting the 10th? I thought there was an email about that changing.
is that, I'm sorry?
Do we have a meeting December 10th? There was an email that you sent, I thought.
Yeah,
about
we're going to
changing.
do December 10th.
Okay.
Yeah,
never mind.
sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
I know there's been a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
And just so you know, for planning purposes,
Yep.
I'm going to be
Yep.
out of the country December 10th.
Yep.
So I will not be able to participate in that meeting.
Yep.
So, okay. So in terms of timing, is that really, Josh, in terms of the December 10th from, in looking at getting a peer review back and considering also there might be the traffic queuing study that their traffic consultant is looking at that might not be done till mid-December? That's with respect to the traffic queuing coming onto the
Yep.
merge. Is that something that, is this something that potentially this is going to push beyond?
I mean, potentially, but not to speak
Wanna
for
make-
the development team, but if we get to that point, December 10th, where they feel like they're not, I think that from the peer reviewer, we could likely get something by that day.
Mhm.
Your second question about whether the DAR document is done, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, if we have a meeting on December 10th and we talk, and that item is not here, I guess we'll have to just, figure that out. But
Yeah, and I would expect that GPI can provide some supplemental information on that specific question, even
Right.
though without waiting for the full report to be done. So we can get that to you.
That would be great. I think that would be good. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
think
absolutely
would
can do
certainly
that.
I think that would certainly be helpful.
Hopefully I spoke correctly there,
Oh.
Rebecca.
You didn't just
You
commit
did,
someone to do
Miranda,
something
yes,
on
we can
Thanksgiving,
definitely
hopefully.
get that queuing information to the town much earlier than the mid-December timeline so that they can have it before their next meeting.
And that could be helpful as well, because potentially that can also go into the hands of a peer reviewer.
Yep,
yep.
Okay,
absolutely.
great. And also, Josh, just in terms of, so engineering, that's going to be in the works. Also, if there's any other, I think also coordinating with potentially DTAC.
Yep.
as well as in terms of safety and such, if there's, if we need to get, is this something we need to get the fire department?
Potentially. So it sounds like,
Just so they're aware of it?
yeah, sounds like I should, in the next week or so, contacting a bunch of these folks, and yeah, I will do that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other comments at all? Or?
Can I just bring it back to Mike's question? Because I think he said, what are we hoping to get out of the peer review? Is it right that, question for you, Josh. So the covenant says we have consideration for traffic to approve sort of this particular use of Trask Lane. We get information back from a peer review. There's a certain level of assessed traffic. Is the decision point our own discretion of what is an acceptable level of traffic? Or where is the threshold, to the extent one exists, for what we should be considering in making that decision?
This is a unique situation. I mean, I think I think at this preliminary stage, I think it's important to just get, receive some documentation, information from the peer reviewer, and then maybe kind of go from there, to be honest. But
I'd just like to put forward that, there's what the estimate will be of what this development will bring in terms of traffic. There is an optimal alternative solution, which is the city of Beverly allowing another road in from County Way. And so anything that's going to be in this plan is going to be more than that. So we're given a bit of a false choice here that doesn't really need to be made.
Mm-hmm.
Take all the traffic or cancel the whole project. I want to see more housing, but why do we have to eat all the traffic because arbitrarily we've been given a false choice because they didn't open up another road? So in terms of discretion, I don't think it's just an arbitrary threshold of this is too much traffic, this is too little traffic. I think this is all more traffic than it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's problematic, and I think has to be taken into consideration.
And I would just say that the covenant doesn't speak generically in terms of traffic. It speaks specifically of matters of safety on the roads within the planning board's jurisdiction.
Yep.
And I would request, Josh, that the peer review scope hopefully references the covenant and why this matter is before the board to begin with, because I do think that is important as we continue these discussions.
Well, I think based on what Tim said, do we need to get a legal opinion from town council as to what our ability is on this, in sense of you have a 50-plus-year-old covenant, which from the perspective of people in the 70s, compared to what the traffic and the impact is today, do we have the ability to, deny the project essentially based on traffic? I think I'd want to know that in our opinion making. And I know she's advocating for her client, which is obviously her role, but I want to know what our ability is to, essentially force their hand to look at other alternatives if we're not going to accept all this traffic in Danvers. Can you arrange that?
yes.
I can speak to that, actually. So we have had initial conversations with legal counsel.
Can you just identify yourself for the...
That's Brian.
All right, Brian Zackelli.
I know who he is.
Sorry, yeah, no, I know. Sorry, Brian Zackelli, Director of Planning here in Danvers. We have had initial conversations with legal counsel. I would not put it past legal counsel potentially coming to meetings in the future because this is kind of uncharted territory for a lot of us, frankly. This is not routine.
Okay.
So that's like the best version that I could get at the moment from legal counsel. I have not invited them. That is the planning board's option. But I have a feeling that it could be very useful for a lot of reasons.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion on that to help support your input or
No. Just there's no motion for that. It's more of do you want? Would you like legal counsel available?
Yes.
You can make that request, and we can if it's not our main contact, maybe it's someone else in the firm. So we can certainly put that through. That there's no vote needed for that. It's more of just do you want it generally.
I think we have universal agreement that we would like legal counsel and to come to a meeting, and I would also ask that they review the issue in advance as well, so that they're able to speak knowledgeably about it.
Wonderful.
Mr. Chair, Dan Bailey, Pierce Atwood for the applicant. If I could just jump in here quickly,
please,
with a question. Who is legal counsel for the board?
It's our town council.
And who is that? Is it KP Law or another firm?
Let's do this.
Is it Murphy? Yeah. I know the attorney's name. It's like Dave DeLuca. Dave DeLuca.
Oh, that's fine.
Yep.
I know Dave. Thank you.
Yep.
In light of the chairman not being here on the 10th, I'm not sure that date's a great date, especially where he can't come in. I'm not sure the applicant would want to have just 4 people unless he could review if we go to a third hearing. So maybe we pick I don't know if we're having a second meeting in December.
And that's Christmas Eve.
It wasn't scheduled, but
It'd be Christmas.
we only need 48 hours to do a meeting, but
So
it's up the will of the board.
I don't know if the board would want to act without its chairman on the 10th, unless we moved it to the following week.
I think the issue, not to interrupt, was that Lou had indicated, I think you're also not available the following Tuesday, so I think that was why
Unfortunately or fortunately, because I'll be out, my wife and I will be away for 2 weeks. And so we're back on the Sunday immediately before Christmas. We leave town on the 9th, so.
It just seems with throwing in legal counsel, throwing in, more research and traffic opinions, this might push it to January, I would think.
Yeah.
One thought I have, I agree. It would be helpful to have the continuity of the members present for these meetings as we move forward. I would not anticipate that we would be done on December 10th. I think it sounds as though you have peer review saying they will have a response close to December 10th, which we're going to need some additional time to respond to. Sure. I would, however, like to keep us on the agenda for December 10th so we can check in on the status of peer review if we don't have it yet, as well as the engineering department. And I'll leave it to the board as to whether legal counsel should be here at that time, but I would think it would make sense to wait until the chair is available. But I think a check-in could be useful given the moving parts.
Seems appropriate to where I sit, but
I'm fine with that. Someone,
would, I guess, to the chair.
Be served as acting chair.
Could we, I guess, where I sit, to the board or to everyone, at that meeting, Lou, I guess, if you were in attendance, would be comfortable if we had a peer review memo, our traffic peer reviewer attended, we talked about the traffic piece, or, particularly their memo that they created, and then maybe talk about the legal piece at the January meeting? Is that what we're sort of game planning?
Yeah, I would prefer to be present when, if we're having any sort of conversations with legal counsel, and just really have if we were indeed to keep this on the agenda for the 10th, really just to have like a check-in meeting.
Right. I would not, for example, sorry for interrupting, but I wasn't expecting that you would have the peer reviewers here for that meeting. I was anticipating that it would just be sort of, are we on track for the January meeting to have legal counsel, peer review, and engineering?
Okay, if we want to set it up like that.
I'm amenable to have that on the agenda. I mean,
I am as well. So that would be great. So December 10th would be, not a major conversation type night.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some progress by then in terms of the report, so we can respond in January.
And then set it up for a January larger bigger conversation situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So,
Okay, great.
all right, do we, so in terms of, we'll be getting legal counsel on this one. We don't need a motion on that. What about for peer review, though, we do need.
There is a motion in the packet for that.
Okay.
You need to move to continue the public hearing?
Let's do the motion for the peer review first.
Right. And this is actually not a public hearing,
right.
so it's a motion to,
Let's do the motion for the peer review, and then we'll do a motion to continue the public meeting to December 10th, 2024.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And so in terms of, Josh, do you want to give just a summary in terms of the recommendation, in terms of the
Yeah,
peer
sure.
reviewer, traffic peer reviewer?
We did get, we got several responses back. There were three that were very competitive and close. We had recently, so the firm that we are recommending this evening is Howard Stein Hudson. We have recently worked with them on a project, so there's some familiarity there.
Which project did they do? I can't remember.
They were the peer reviewer for 152 Endicott.
Okay.
And also, they
Also near highway interchange, so.
they also, just in terms of their quote, they could attend several meetings. That was part of it. They could, so in person, if that's so.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing
Yes,
you,
sir.
Josh.
Yep.
I didn't hear who it was
Oh, sorry.
and what you said in terms of the
that's sort of
quote.
important. Yep. So Howard Stein Hudson.
Okay.
Yep. And obviously, we will share with you, and we could continue to have a conversation about it.
And is there a ballpark on what they estimate for this?
Yeah, it was I think it was like 13,000.
I would just say that's substantially higher than the peer review that we've seen so far in Beverly, which was the whole kit and caboodle. So,
To be honest, that between the four people that responded, that was one of the lowest ones.
I'd be interested in seeing that scope.
Sure. And then, did you have a question? Did you have another question? I'm sorry.
Okay. So there's a motion to move forward in terms of, we want to have a motion to have this with the, so this would be at the development team's cost.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the proposal was 13,700.
I'm going to just check with clients who are on the call to make sure there's no, I understand it's the board's decision, but.
Good evening, Peter Mahoney with John M. Corcoran and Company. I just, as Miranda pointed out, this is, I think, twice or close to twice what the cost of the one in Beverly was. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about scope. Is the scope the review of the entire traffic report? And if so, is that what the board is asking of us?
Let's see.
I think the focus is, as we discussed tonight, the trash lane area, the two intersections at Route 128, particularly the end of, Elliott Street, and the one I in Beverly. We could have further discussions about this. I could share the scope with you folks tomorrow. We can have a little bit more conversation if we need to amend it, in some minor ways. I think that we're open to it.
Okay.
Right, but we'd be voting on the.
You're making the motion that we're doing a peer review. We're doing Howard Stein Hudson. So we do have the ability to sort of amend that's that's what we're voting to do. So we can't change it. We can modify it a little bit.
Right, but if it comes back to us and it's not as if it's too narrow a scope ultimately, in our view, then we're.
I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I don't know. I'm not sure how to. I don't know.
Okay. I think that we still.
Well,
I mean,
to keep the ball rolling, I think we need to, that we do want to get this traffic peer review, but, I mean, we're doing multiple tracks here at the same time, also getting town council involved too.
right.
I think staff is saying that they shot this at 3 different firms, and this
Right.
firm they've worked with, and this is actually the lower of the 3 costs. So this is what they're recommending to the board. I, for one, am in we're going to vote on this motion for
Yeah.
peer review. So you put it out to a vote, we're going to read the motion, and we're going to move forward. If the applicant does not want that, then we have a problem. And
Well,
I'm
I
sure
think-
you're not talking about the price.
No,
for a
we're talking,
500-unit development.
we're concerned about what the scope is and what comes back to the board. And, for example, whether the Beverly intersections are something that the Danvers peer reviewer is going to be reviewing in addition to the Beverly peer review, in addition to Beverly Parking and Traffic, in addition to Mass DOT, and in addition to MIPA, and with the town of Danvers having ample opportunity in the MIPA process to provide additional comments. So that's the concern, and it may be that, well, the board should make its motion, and I suspect that we'll be having further conversations about it.
All right. All right, we have a motion. Jean, can I ask for a motion?
I'm make a motion. The planning board votes to move forward with Howard Stein Hudson to review the traffic report submitted for the proposed development project at Trask Lane, Danvers, under MGL 53G outside consultants.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second? Very good. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, there's been a motion for peer review. So let's go, and I'd like to entertain a motion to continue this public meeting to the next,
No.
I'm sorry, to the board's December 10th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Okay? First by Jim, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jean. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay. Next agenda item, this is a public hearing of 24 Newbury Street, Route 1, request for a special permit and a waiver submitted by MAG Real Estate Holdings, Danvers, LLC, and McGovern Auto Group for property at 24 Newbury Street, map 48, lot 008, pursuant to section 30.5 in Table 1, Table of Allowable Uses, Motor Vehicle Sales, Outdoor, and Section 10.1.2, Parking Waiver of the zoning bylaw. Said property is in the Highway Corridor Zone zoning district. The applicant is proposing to utilize the existing building as an automotive dealership with associated site modifications and inventory storage. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Nancy McCann. I'm here on behalf
you.
of the applicant, and hopefully we will make this a little more brief and straightforward than your last event.
Okay.
With me tonight is Matt McGovern, also Steve Horsfall, project engineer, and Tom DeTore, also with McGovern Auto Group. And we are seeking a special permit for motor vehicle sales outdoor for the property located at 24 Newbury Street. The property is in the Highway Corridor zoning district. Josh, if you could put up, I sent you some photo, okay, we got that. I have a couple of photographs of the prior condition, but the board may already be familiar with this site. It was the site of the Sunline Outdoor Furniture company for many, many years. It's been vacant now for a while. This is on the southbound side of Route 1, just south of Route 114. And it's been the site of a variety of retail uses with outdoor sales components associated with them. And what we're proposing to do is simply to reuse this site for what it's been used for, retail sales, in this case motor vehicle sales, and the outdoor sale of motor vehicles in association with that. And the reason we're doing this is that you will recall back in April, you approved the McGovern Hyundai Genesis dealership campus for the Canes Garden Center site on Andover Street. And that project is moving forward. The applicant has been working with the Canes as they wrap up their business. That takes some time. So during the course of construction, which will probably be about 18 months, we'd like to use this location as a temporary dealership location. It will operate as a new car under a Class 1 dealer's license and have the indoor as well as outdoor sale of motor vehicles. Indoor sales, again, of motor vehicles is a permitted use. If that were it, we wouldn't be here at all. But of course, as with most dealerships, all that I can think of actually in Danvers, we have an outdoor sales component associated with the dealership, and that's what triggers the site plan review. We are not proposing any changes in particular to this site. We're going to use it as it's a temporary dealership. We're going to use it as is. So there is no site plan review associated with this. This is simply the special permit. We are seeking a parking waiver that I'll discuss in a couple of minutes, similar to what you've seen in other auto dealerships, simply because the bylaw has not kept pace with how motor vehicle sales are done now, mostly online. Again, the property has been vacant for a while. It's about a 7-acre site, and we are going to utilize the existing conditions, existing curb cuts, existing parking areas, with gravel inventory storage areas, which has been inventory storage for the patio type of furniture and other inventory that's been sold on the site over the years. And we're going to utilize the existing sales building. There will be some major cleanup of the site. Much has already occurred, actually, under the applicant's direction, and that will continue, but no other particular site changes. There will be some exterior upgrades to the existing building, and interior, of course, that's going to be renovated and upgraded for the needs of the auto dealerships. But otherwise, it's basically as is. There's no increase in the impervious surface. Nothing other than really cosmetic changes to the exterior. And we will be placing a covering over the concrete area that's existing now at the rear of the site. There'll be a covering over that which will serve as the service area for the vehicles. Being a Class 1 dealer, you've got to provide some service location, and that's where this will be. But it's a temporary type of covering to allow that area to be heated and used for service. We've met again with planning staff, and as I said, site plan review is not triggered, simply the special permit aspect of the application. With regard to the dealerships, there'll be 20 employees. Hours of operations would be exactly what you would expect: Monday through Thursday, 9 to 7, Friday and Saturday, 9 to 6, closed on Sunday. And service department, 7 to 6, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Monday through Friday, and Saturday, 8 to 5, again closed on Sunday. And no outdoor audio will be used at any time on the site.
You said outdoor audio will not be used?
Will not be used.
I knew I was going to ask that.
I said
At first you
that
said will
for
be used,
Attorney
and I was wondering
Sears'
what-
benefit
Does that
only.
include the horns going off from the cars when you try to locate them in the lot?
We'll do the best we can on that. This site, unlike some of the dealerships that you've seen, we really don't have any residential neighbors here, which is certainly helpful. I did in the application outline all of the criteria for the issuance of the special permit. This application meets all of those. There are 7 of those criteria. I'm happy to go through it, but it's there for you already, and we do meet those criteria. This use is consistent with other uses within the highway corridor, as well as the Route 114 neighboring Zone A corridor as well. I'll turn this over now to Steve Horsfall, who can review the plan briefly with you, and then we can hopefully wrap this up.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Steve Horsfall with Kelly Engineering Group. as you know, you can see that we've been utilizing the existing facility. We've done the best that we can to put together a striping plan to accommodate the storage, along with the customer parking within the front area of the building. We've also, gone through and analyzed the fact that a car carrier can pull off-site here, not in the breakdown lane on the highway. We have some samples of that if necessary, but that's been reviewed by our office so far. The existing facility will be remodeled. Any permits that are needed within the town will be obtained through the various departments. I don't know if you have any other questions.
Just had a quick question on the lighting. Are you proposing new lighting, or what is there for lighting to protect and show the vehicles? Because we've had experience, especially with car dealerships in the past, that have had lighting that you could see on the moon. But I'm assuming, are you adding new lighting, or does the lighting that's there now suffice?
At this point, I think we're expecting to use the light system that's there. Some of the fixtures may be replaced or redirected as necessary.
So there'll be box shine down lighting. Do we have any specs on that you can provide to staff? Just because we've had experiences with dealerships and over lighting the site, to secure, but also.
Can you go to the microphone, if you don't mind? That'd be great, thanks. And just identify yourself for the record. Yeah.
Tom DeTore from McGovern Auto Group. I think it's more of an upgrade of the existing lighting that's out there now. The building is pretty old. There's a little bit of work we have to do both inside and out. And particularly in the back of the building, the lighting needs to be kind of updated and brighter. It's a little bit antiquated. And then more along the southbound side of the structure, where we'll have inventory there as well. We're going to have downlighting as well. So there's a little bit of upgrading to do that.
So normally with a site plan, that would be provided to us. So I think we'd have you work with staff to make sure that we've got the proper lighting. You're amenable to that as a condition? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So just turning to questions. Oh, did you have any?
No, if there are any other questions,
Jim,
The only other question was snow removal. Do you have snow removal areas that you can indicate where?
we can certainly provide a plan to the planning department that shows potential snow removal areas.
Okay, you've got, because you've got a lot of wetlands to the.
We do, yeah. There's a lot of wetlands. There's also the north side of the existing building where there's an old shed and garage, an old building, a house that was not being used any longer. There's plenty of room around that side of the site that we can have snow storage.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think you'd need to provide a plan of that as well,
Right.
and just not using any type of salt and stuff like that that could impact the wetlands.
Could you be willing to include that as a condition as well, with respect to the special permit, working with town staff with respect to a snow removal plan? Okay, snow removal and storage. Okay. Jim, anything further you have
The
questions?
other question I had is, I know this is a temporary use, what do you propose after the 18 months or 2 years go by for the site?
We'll be back to you.
Okay.
With a proposal. It's anticipated for a dealership site that will be brand new,
Okay.
up to date, modern, spiffy, just like the one you've approved on Andover Street already. But that will be, we'll call that phase 2 or 3.
So not planning
down
on
the
just
road.
using it for storage or anything of that
No.
nature? Gotcha.
No.
Thank you.
Yep.
Snow, sound, and lighting, we already checked off the Jim Sears checklist, so I think all my questions have all been answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Jean?
I don't have any plans, thanks. Questions, thanks.
Mike?
My only question, and I think you said that the trucks could turn into this parking lot. Is that? Can you confirm that?
I'll point it out if you want to tell.
So a truck can.
Entrance, yeah, I have a couple of handouts if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I'd love to see. I mean, a truck. You're saying a truck can turn into the entrance that she's pointing to there, and then pull in even with those parking spaces there. Okay. The only reason I'm mainly concerned is because there's an on ramp right there. So if there's a flatbed with trucks right there, that's my main concern. But if you're,
We don't want.
yeah, the turning radius at that
getting hit.
entrance looks a little wonky, but thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this is,
Oh, I got two.
yeah, one more, yeah.
want it, Josh.
Oh, yeah. Yep,
I think the plan on the screen actually has an additional parking space that is not shown on this plan. Not that that's a big deal, but I just think there's one space that is cutting it, like that the truck can't go past. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. So whatever we
Is the
had
updated?
that track.
I'm not
that
concerned with
truck
it. It looks like
turning.
you guys took care of it.
We've got plenty. The issue was that we discussed, because I know the board has seen it at other dealerships. No car carriers are going to be unloading along Route 1. Everything has to be unloaded in the site, and so what you have there is a demonstration showing you that that can happen.
okay,
Yeah, that was my only concern, so thank you. Appreciate it.
got it.
And just to clarify.
Tim, did you have a question?
Yeah, this says 10 spaces, but the PDF says 12. So is it 10 in the sort of the area along Route 1?
That's what she was just saying. This plan is accurate. That one is outdated.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Wait, say that.
Again, this isn't a site plan review, so the plan that you have demonstrates the compliance with regard to getting the truck carrier off of the site, and we would, if you would like to reference that plan in your decision, that's perfectly fine as well. The other item, again, is the parking waiver that we're requesting. The bylaw requires 67 parking spaces, and of course, as this board has determined in other auto dealerships, that really is way too much parking, given the way people buy vehicles, and this kind of also goes to lighting of the whole inventory section, which is appropriate when you've got people walking around the inventory as they used to do years ago, but that's really not the way it's done now. It's mostly online. So
Is that generally, and again, I haven't purchased a new vehicle in a while, so what is what's sort of the...
You buy online, and you pick out your vehicle, and you go once to the dealership, as opposed to
Still do a
years
drive.
past, you
So
would.
online means the internet.
I know, yes. I have purchased a car online. I'm just asking if it's been a while ago, so it's...
Well, years ago, it used to be that you'd bring the kids on a Saturday afternoon, the dealership would be having hot dogs,
Oh, I
you'd
remember
roam all
President's Day
over.
sales, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's really not the way it's done anymore so much. So rather than 4 trips to the dealership, you're making 1.
Got it.
Maybe 2. So it's just different. And we've got 20 employees. We're anticipating probably 8 customers over an hour time. And so we are providing 36 customer and employee parking spaces. That's going to be more than enough. So we've requested the waiver from the 67 down to the 36. If for some reason there is an issue that that's not enough, we've got plenty of area for parking, but we would request that
Attorney
that
Ga-
waiver.
And you
Attorney
do...
McCann, I'm so sorry to interrupt. You said which plan was the accurate one?
For purposes of the parking spaces, it would be the one that we handed out tonight, which
So would that number then for the waiver be not 36 but 34? Because Tim mentioned that.
take a couple away. All right, then
So-
if they've taken 2
so
off,
that's-
then 34, I still think we have,
No, I just wanted
Anna.
to, for accurate
for
purposes.
the waiver, then we'll go with 34
everyone, or that would be
spaces.
34 parking spaces.
Yeah.
So, right, is that correct?
Yes,
Well, because was it originally proposed 36? or
36.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yep,
So
thank you.
34.
So in the decision, yep.
Okay.
Right, that's why I wanted to.
Okay. I don't have the only question I have is there were some additional engineering comments, I think, just issued today.
Just today.
Oh, just sorry to interrupt. We had engineering comments a week ago. There were just some minor or just a little tweaks to a couple, 2 or 3, just the last couple ones. They're just some minor tweaks, but that's
So the pertinent date, we're looking for engineering memo just for, and the applicant's willing to include as a condition to be compliant with any engineering comments in their memo of November 12th.
Yep.
Yes, we would certainly take a condition that the applicant will work with the engineering department to address the comments.
Okay. adhere to all the conditions and comments in the engineering division memo.
Yep.
Dated November 12th.
Yep.
That's typical language.
Mr. Chairman, my laptop died, but I'm wondering is there stormwater management concern here? Are they addressing
That was one of the conditions as to whether that is triggered if stormwater permit is required. If it is,
Yeah.
then we'll have to comply with that.
Are there oil water separators and all that stormwater management on that site presently?
Not presently, but they would be installed potentially in the only area that's going to need it, because we're not having vehicles stored inside the building. So it would be in the service area. And the project engineer will be working with the town engineer with regard to what's required in the building inspector, because of course that's a building code as well as the engineering department issue as to what, bless you, as to what oil and gas separators. We do anticipate that they will be required and they will be installed.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unique in that you're not coming with a site plan. I understand you're
Right.
not building a building, but you're changing the use from a retail to a car storage repair / showroom. So it seems like we're asking you to do all these things, so it's a little unique, I would say, that you're not asking for site plan. I understand that you're not building a building, but the use
Right.
is changing to this type of use. So that's why we're going through all these things. So I think it's
Yeah.
helpful. And in light of the fact that you're going to upgrade the site to this new dealership, it would seem to me, why not do the stormwater management now, even though you might change the layout of the footprint of the buildings?
Well, we would do stormwater management to comply with the stormwater bylaw.
Right.
I think that's what you're asking me, to the extent that that's triggered. But remember, we're not changing any of the surface, any of the existing surface. We've got some impervious, we've got some gravel. None of that is being changed. To the extent that anything is triggered under the stormwater management bylaw, we will, of course, do that. One of the conditions that came out in the engineering department's comments today is this may require the service area to have an oil and gas separator. And also, item number 5 will comply with Title V requirements for septic systems. So those conditions are perfectly fine. Those are code issues outside of zoning that have to be complied with. And we understand that.
It does by virtue of storing vehicles, does that trigger it?
What?
Where you're storing vehicles on site, wouldn't that trigger it on its own?
Trigger what?
Stormwater management,
No, not by itself, no.
not by itself.
No.
Josh, in terms of stormwater management, that's sufficiently covered in terms of between the engineering comments and the general
like,
conditions?
Right. If that was an issue or concern, I believe that would have been indicated in that memo.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the members of the board? This is a public hearing, so are there any public? I'm seeing a head shake.
We got one left.
We have one left. What's that? Oh. Not at this time. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bradstreet. Okay, then I'm going to turn it back to the board. Any further comments before I entertain a motion to close the public hearing? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion. Yep, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So
Tim
moved.
got it.
Okay, Tim got it. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Jim. Okay. There's a motion been made to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, moving back to what is before us here. And so we have, this is for the respect to the special permit. Okay, and you should have the decision here. Jean, I think there are a couple of conditions which we want to make sure we get in there.
Yeah.
We have the staff with respect to lighting.
Yep.
Snow removal and storage, again, working with staff.
So
And
I guess if we could just talk about those for a minute, not to interrupt.
Sure.
was the condition applicant shall provide a plan that shows snow storage areas? Was that the condition?
I believe that what we discussed was that, what do you get, Jean?
Applicant will provide a plan showing snow removal and storage.
I don't know how it would show removal. That's why I was. So applicant
Snow storage areas.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what
That's
you usually
Does that
say.
sound all right to everyone? Applicant shall provide a plan that shows snow storage areas, and then
To
applicant.
town staff.
Yep. And then applicant shall provide a plan that shows proposed lighting. Is that what we were thinking about for lighting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Specs,
And
Yeah, she has it proposed
cut sheets,
oh, okay.
lighting
I could add that.
specifications.
So maybe on that same.
candles, all that good stuff.
Okay.
Applicant shall provide a plan that shows the location of proposed lighting and lighting cut sheets. Sound good?
Okay, so proposed locations of lighting and specifications
And lighting.
to town staff. Okay, was there anything else we,
Comply with department comments dated 11/12/24.
I think we already have that in there, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I can take that out.
Yep.
Yep.
And the only other thing was was there anything, I have something here about reference car carry,
Yep, so we'll reference this plan, and then maybe we'll also revise the other plan the parking needs to be modified.
right,
but-
so we revised the decision, so it's 34 parking spaces based on this plan we have.
Right,
tonight.
exactly.
Okay. All right, so do we have a motion from the clerk?
Grant of special permit for 24 Newberry Street. Date of application, October 10th, 2024. Date of hearing, November 12th, 2024. Date of decision, November 12th, 2024. This is to certify that at a meeting of the Danvers Planning Board held on November 12th, 2024, having been requested under Section 30.5 and Table 1, Table of Allowable Uses of the zoning bylaw for property located at 24 Newberry Street, Assessors Map 48, Lot 8. It was voted to approve the request submitted by MAG RE Holdings, Danvers LLC, and McGovern Auto Group for a special permit to allow motor vehicle sales outdoor, as shown on the following plans. MAG RE Holdings, Danvers LLC, 24 Newberry Street, Danvers, Massachusetts, prepared by Kelly Engineering Group, Incorporated, dated October 10th, 2024, consisting of 2 sheets. The planning board grants a special permit pursuant to section 30.5 of zoning bylaw, required findings for issuance of special permits, and finds all of the following criteria have been satisfied. 1. Social, economic, or community needs which are served by the proposal. 2. Traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading. 3. Adequacy of utilities and other public services. 4. Compatibility with size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood. 5. Impacts on the natural environment. And 6. Potential fiscal impact, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. The following requirements from the zoning bylaw have been waived. Section 10.1.d, parking. Planning board waives the parking requirement of 67 parking spaces for a reduction to 34 parking spaces based on the following findings. A, no substantial detriment shall result. B, any decrease in number of required parking spaces will not create undue congestion or traffic hazards. C, any such relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood. Conditions of approval. The project is subject to the following conditions. 1. Prior to issuance of a building permit, this special permit decision shall be recorded at the Southern Essex Registry of Deeds. 2. The applicant shall adhere to all the conditions and comments in the Danvers Engineering Division memorandum dated November 12, 2024. 3. If there are any changes to the approved plan, the use, or the conditions on premises, planning staff will review. If deemed a major change by staff, the applicant will have to apply for a modification to application to the special permit. This project is subject to the what are we up to?
Those are
4.
site
Applicant will provide a plan to town staff showing proposed lighting locations and specifications. 5. Applicant will provide a plan to town staff showing snow storage areas. This project is subject to the attached list of general conditions. Any approval of this special permit shall lapse within 3 years from the grant thereof if construction has not begun by such date.
Motion's been made. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, second by
Mr.
Mike.
Chairman, can I ask for clarification? The general conditions were attached to your decision, but those are site plan conditions. Those are not applicable to special permits?
They're just general, they're just general conditions. So why is that an issue?
Okay. Are these general conditions?
They are generally with site plan, but they're
I've never seen them attached to a special permit.
in the situation, it's not a site plan application,
This
but
requires written certifications from town engineer for water and sewer and utilities and all that kind of stuff. It isn't applicable
okay, so if it's not
to,
applicable, then,
to a use special permit. These are site plan conditions.
is there ones in particular that we can modify them? Are there ones in particular that,
Well, I think we've agreed to the conditions that the board wanted on this use. They're just not applicable. This is not site plan review.
Okay. Right, Josh, we typically include any of these general conditions on a special permit? No.
we do very few special permits, as this feels, it doesn't meet any of the triggers of site plan, so there's not a site plan application, but they're pretty applicable. They are in every site plan decision. We don't do a lot of special permits.
Right.
We don't do a lot of projects where we just do special permits, especially not projects of like this, where we're granting a special permit for the use, but clearly there are site things happening, right? So is there something in particular, Attorney McCann, that you think should not, that I don't think that there are any that handcuff the project or the use in any way, but let's.
I just don't think they're applicable. We've discussed the conditions that are applicable to the use special permit. This does not trigger site plan review, so you're talking about written certification from a registered engineer for site improvements. We're not doing site improvements.
Okay, so it wouldn't be applicable, obviously, then.
Planning board and buildings receive written certification from the town engineer regarding utilities. That's under building code and under the building permit. This is,
Aren't you installing new utilities? There's new utilities being installed.
only as required under the plumbing code.
Isn't there new water, sewer, and service and everything?
That's one of the issues that's covered under the condition of the engineering department, which this board has already covered in its condition. In order to ensure continued compliance of an approved site plan, well, there isn't an approved site plan. That's not what's applicable here. These just don't apply. If there's something here that you want, we've already agreed to the snow storage to provide that. These just aren't attached to special permits.
Because we do very few special permits where, on their own, where there's been one special permit we've done in 3 years that was just the use, that's like an interior tenant. If the board and/or the group doesn't think they're applicable and wants to remove the general conditions, I'm fine with it. I just thought some of them are applicable, some might not be. The will of the board, that's fine. I don't have a strong recommend. If the board doesn't think that they're necessary, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Let's see. I 'Cause So it's Attorney McKenna, your view is just you want the general condition, you want that general condition just stricken? Or
Yeah,
It's
they're
applicable or
they're
some-
just not applicable. These are the general conditions approved by the planning board on January 27, 2004, and February 27,
Right.
2018 are special conditions for site plan approval, and that's not what this is.
Right. What about any of the other conditions that, in terms of prior to issuance of building permits and construction?
If there's something in here that you want as a condition of, this is a use special permit. So the conditions that you're imposing are relative to the use, not to construction.
Right, okay. So in terms of, for example, looking at one of the conditions in terms of the water use mitigation fee, the WUMP fee,
Yeah.
It is already mentioned in the engineering comments.
it's already mentioned in
We could be fine, we could be fine getting rid of it.
okay.
Bless
I
you.
mean, they are very general,
Mm-hmm.
as the name states. If we want to strike them, I'm okay with that.
So staff,
That's fine. You could remove them.
That's,
Bless you.
That's fine.
okay. Is there anything else in the these general conditions that staff would recommend that are not included in the engineering memo or elsewhere? I mean, I understand this is a unique situation, so this is a little bit,
That's why I felt they were kind of
right.
sort of appropriate in a way.
Yeah, but I understand it's still a special permit decision as well, so I
Right.
get the,
Because they didn't have to do a site plan, they would never be in it, but
right. Okay.
it's fine. I mean, a lot of the snow storage, we talked about it.
We
the
covered snow storage.
there, so
Mhm.
that's fine. I mean, it talks a little bit about hours of construction. There's no residential nearby,
Right,
so I think that's fine. If we want to strike them, that's fine.
okay.
All right.
Jeannie, you fine with? You're making the motion.
So you second the motion, so you just want to amend the motion to delete
Right, I think we just,
the
Is that all right with
subject
you?
to the general conditions.
okay. All right, so a motion's been made as recited with the exception of the language, this project is subject to the attached list of general conditions, which that specific language is struck.
You can't make the motion.
What's that?
You can't make.
I'm not making no, I was just reflecting what she said in terms
Yeah.
of the motion. Jean made the,
So,
I have to
yeah,
say it.
she has to amend her own.
Okay.
You can't.
Okay.
Because you're the chairman. She has to amend her motion.
So
it's getting late.
revise the motion,
Amend the motion.
amend the motion, everything I just stated with the exception of removing the general conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mike. Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay.
Thank you
good.
very much.
Good luck. Okay.
Just keeping you on the Roberts rules.
No, I keep you under Robert's rules. That's important. Okay, good. All right, I think our last item, thank you very much. Good luck. Okay, I think our next agenda item were meeting minutes. We had minutes from our, I believe it was the July 16th meeting. Everybody had the chance to review and, okay, is there I'd like to entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Tim has made a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Josh, anything further we got?
So just upcoming meetings.
Yep.
Our next meeting, November 26th. So we will have the subdivision rules and regs conversation, and we will have.
Could you speak up a little bit again? Sorry.
Yep, sorry. The subdivision rules and regs conversation that was continued from tonight.
Yep.
We will open the public hearing for the zoning amendments for February town meeting.
Yep.
And 90% trying to confirm, or we will have an informal presentation about potential future plans at Putnam Pantry. And we might have, there was a condition for the Maple Square project that they have to come back to present to the board the sign package, and that will likely be on that evening also.
Okay. And you said the informal from Putnam Pantry, that's a proposed development, but it's just sort of this is sort of a peak of what they'll be.
It's a peak. It's not an official formal application. It's a sort of an opportunity for someone to get a little bit of feedback from the group.
Which we've done before, I think, with
Yes.
other.
Yep. We did with
Public meeting, but not a public hearing,
neither, just completely informal.
but no public input.
That would be the discretion to Lou, I guess.
Discretion of the
but,
chair. Yeah.
But
Okay. Great. Sounds good.
Is that here?
all the meetings will be here, just in terms of for the foreseeable future, just some of the items having potential larger groups.
Mhm.
I just wasn't sure tonight how many people were going to come. And then previous to this was the election stuff in the Toomey room.
Sure.
Maybe go back. I think the idea or goal would be move back to Toomey and maybe maybe January-ish, or just depending on that trash lane item. I just wasn't
Okay.
sure how many members of the public were going to come, so
Okay.
I wanted to have a bigger room for that. Just
Well,
wasn't
we're
sure.
still gonna have the zoning stuff we'll be doing in January, won't we?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Special town meeting stuff?
What about? Yeah, we'll be doing that in January also.
So probably keep it here, right?
That's what I was kind of thinking.
Might be.
I was kind of thinking until things are a little slower.
I like Toomey just because it's easier to hear.
Yeah.
And it just, we don't have a fan behind us, and I like this.
The fridge or whatever is going on
I
in
like
here.
I like the space at Toomey better, but I get this is a better room for people to come. You have less.
For bigger
privacy.
items, it's a little easier.
Is there really nowhere else in town besides this for a bigger meeting? Because this is pretty terrible.
Not that I'm aware of. Another Gordon room, but I felt like
Gordon room is
speaking
sort
to one
of
of
a
my
small
colleagues,
room.
that Gordon room at the library, like there's not a lot of DCAT technology.
Yeah, you gotta have this.
Is
It's
there a
like-
room in the school that is accessible that has any of the technology that's better?
Potentially,
Suited.
I could look
Yeah,
into
the,
it. Or
Right there.
Actually, the multipurpose room over at the middle school has been used. I know when we've done some sort of our sort of land use summits.
Sure,
and
sure.
such, and that's a pretty
Mhm.
good.
Sure.
That's a pretty good space.
Sure. I could look into it.
Yeah, that might be worth checking out just to see in terms of an option. And that's
The sound is not good at all here.
very
right, because you probably get tired of me keep saying, "Could you? I can't hear you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. That's fine. Yeah, I hear all of you.
Okay. All right.
Sort of when it's
Yeah.
not like
Okay.
blaring in my ear.
Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to it. Oh, Jim and I are not in sync today. So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.